Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to hear me today. I really appreciate it. I know time is always busy in the life of an academic advisor. So, are all advisors in the room? Any non-academic advisors, I should say? So we have a couple. Okay, what areas? I'm interested. Oh, awesome. Two. Okay. Hmm? Okay. Awesome. And then another couple.
Orientation.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, again, I really appreciate you all being here. All areas definitely all relating to academic advising, so I'm looking forward to geeking out with you all, because you probably all also find this information interesting. My name is Ben Forche. I'm the Director of Student Affairs for the Patton College of Education at Ohio University. At Ohio University, my college is the only college that has full professional advising. All of our other colleges have essentially one professional advisor and then supplemental with faculty advising. I have 6 professional advisors that report to me. I have an undergraduate recruiter that reports to me. And then we also focus on our retention initiatives and efforts. But here today talking about how advising can play out in a digital world and what that looks like. So definitely, again, appreciate this opportunity. I absolutely love coming here for this weather. I was, like anyone getting ready for a trip, I pulled out my phone, look at the weather app to plan for my trip here, and 82 and sunny, 82 and sunny, 82 and sunny. Just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from in Southeast Ohio, last Saturday we had our graduate assistant interviews, and when I got there, it was roughly 38, 39 degrees, but in Ohio was a good day because there was no snow on the ground. After my first interview, we had 7 interviews lined up. Walk our first candidate out after the interview, there were several inches of snow on the ground. And I'm thinking, great, I have 6 more interviews, and this doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. By the time we finished, we had a level 2 snow emergency. And for those that are not familiar with level snow emergencies, level 1, it's like, be cautious. Level 2, you better have a good reason being on the road, work, be smart. Level 3, you can actually be arrested unless you are an emergency official or a state mandated reporter, which that looks different in terms of higher ed state mandated reporter than does for state level snow emergencies. So my 40-minute drive took me about 2 hours to get home. Fast forward 3 days to Tuesday, it was 80 degrees and sunny. And then I fast forward till Thursday, and I'm getting a call from my children's daycare that the daycare is flooded and we need to come pick up our 2 little ones because they don't have canoes for everyone. So Ohio weather this time of the year, as we were talking, just wait, if you don't like it, it'll probably change in the 24 hours. So so I absolutely love the opportunity to come speak with you all. I am repping my blue and red for FAU today. But let's get to it. Maybe. Talking about technology and it's not working. That's helpful. There we go. Okay. So from my mentor, I took something on from her that I've done in all my presentations, and many of you may know Jenny, or Dr. Bloom, as I know many of you refer to her. She talks about how recognizing the people that got you where you are today. And I cannot talk about that without talking about my family. So this is a photo of my wife and my 2 daughters. It's Mandy, and my 2 daughters are Charlotte and Sadie. Sadie just turned 6 months old, and Charlotte will be 3 in March. I owe her a lot, especially from this trip, because yesterday, as I was flying here, I got a text from my wife that she caught the 24-hour stomach virus that's going around in Ohio right now. So she was there with my 2 little ones, and our nearest family members are about 4.5 hours away. Fortunately, I'm convinced I have some of the best well-behaved children on earth, because they were perfectly angels the whole day. Because at the end of the day, I called her and she said, "Yeah, it was a great day." I'm like, "You're sick. How is it a good day?" And there's angels, so they're fantastic. I want to acknowledge our Appreciative Advising faculty, our team. Definitely would not have the opportunity to be talking about with you all today had it not been for support and guidance and what I've been able to do in advising. So definitely appreciate their assistance. Now I want to talk about a young gentleman. Some of you may recognize this individual. His name's Cody. When Jenny started doing her talks years ago, she kind of had the question of why does she do what she do? And she always came back to Cody, which at the time Cody was like, yay, hi. But whenever she's meeting with a student, she would think of Cody, her grandson. And so she would think that this is someone's Cody. And so that's the attention and care and devotion I need to give to the student, because that's what I would want an advisor doing for my Cody. We're just past, over a year where Cody actually took his life, which I think something like that is always going to catch anyone off guard. This really caught us off guard. Cody, if you ever had the chance to meet him, one of the most professional, well-spoken, just well put together, smart. He was that type of student that, what career do you want? Because you got it. I mean, he literally could do anything. He was just that good. So this definitely caught everyone by surprise. And so this kind of changed a lot of our thinking. And so when we're thinking about, who's your Cody, it's not just who is your Cody, but then you need to go deeper than that. I had no clue that Cody was struggling. Everyone's got their demons to some extent, and no clue that that's what was going on in Cody's life. Because from the outside, he looked great. He was happy. He perfect, found a job right away, well paying, good life. But everyone struggles with something. And so when you are working with students, not just taking those surface level, those ticks that, okay, you're doing that right, you're doing that right, you're doing that right. You're spending the time to really get to know your students and what they're doing in their lives. So for me, again, it's pretty simple about, who's my Cody. I got my two little ones at home, and I would just want the same care and concern. And who knows, maybe one day I'll be coming to be one of your advisees at one point. And so I just hope that that's something we can all carry with us when we're working with students. I want to talk about this concept, the power of thank you and sorry. Kid President, any Kid President fans? Yeah, Kid President talks a lot about this idea of thanking. It can be so powerful, and it can really change a relationship and dynamics just by saying thank you. But you have to mean it. And where I've seen this played out in my role, a little over a year ago, I was promoted to this director role. And I kept many of my advisees on. I still wanted to be their advisor. But they recognized there was a change. I was now supervising the office. And what I was discovering for these advising appointments, they would typically come in, and when I come out to greet them and bring them back, they'd say, oh, I'm so sorry. I know you're really busy. This will just take a minute. I hate to bother you. To them, it was an inconvenience just based on my role change alone that they were meeting with me. When I'm sure many of you could agree with the same sentiment that meeting with students is probably the best part of your day. And I had to really work on that. Like, no, this is your time, 30 minutes, I'm devoted to you. I didn't have other stuff planned. Like, this is your time. And it still wasn't getting the message across. They were still saying sorry. And then one day I just took a different approach. I was quite blunt and honest with them. I said, listen, I can interpret university policy for you. I can read your degree out or your transcript like the back of my hand. It's easy. I'm trained. I'm skilled, and I understand that. It's boring. I'd rather not do that all day, but I can do it. The best part of my day is hearing about you, hearing your story, your journey. That's exciting. That's what makes me fulfilled at the end of the day. That's what I'd rather spend all day doing. And it's just that honesty with students is what changed things. So getting rid of this idea of them saying sorry, me saying thank you for making my day interesting. And thank you for being a reminder about what I do and why I do it. And then for this concept, this privilege that we have, right? Even if you can't get on this concept of, it being the best part or the students are all about it, let's look at a bare sense of the word. If you don't have students, do you have a job? Without them, there's no career options here for you. So at a bare minimum, at least keep that in mind when you're working with your students. And then this concept of sorry. Any TED Talk fans out there? Absolutely love TED Talks. So I'm going to allow a speaker from TED Talk to explain this concept of sorry.
have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class. Because I am the best teacher and you are the best students, they put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise, you just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so, I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. 4 years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
Sorry, the video is stuttering a little bit. I think it's just some of the technology we're working with. But any former K-12 educators in the room? Any truth behind that? I thought so. Okay. So first I want to kind of do a little bit of history on, academic advising. And so it was probably the late 80s, early 90s when the concept of professional advising was really starting to get its foothold. Terry O'Bannon came up with this definition of what academic advising is. And some of this up here, I'm sure if you were to bring in some of your students, you would agree that course scheduling, choosing programs, that sort of thing. But we can definitely define advising as a little bit more than what's listed up here today. And so that's where I think appreciative advising comes in. And so that brings me to what the focus of this afternoon's about. Anytime you're doing presentations on technology, I think there's a common almost misconception that they're going to come in, present a nice, neatly packaged directions on how to do a said technology, and that's all you need to know. And sometimes those presentations do work out, do really well. They solve a lot of problems, but usually they're polar opposites. Either absolutely loved it or absolutely hated it. Because I'm not familiar with your systems, I'm not familiar with your limitations. So rather than focusing from that perspective, I'm focusing from a methodological standpoint. As you're approaching different technologies and social media, how can you best organize and present yourself to be successful in those different environments? And so I think appreciative advising is a good framework for accomplishing that. I want to talk about the joy of advising, and I'm living proof of this, and it is true that when I do appreciative advising, when I really truly understood appreciative advising and started using it on a daily basis, I see it dip into my personal life. It's very common for me to bring this home, and when I'm working with others outside of higher ed, that you do see the impact it makes. It has a huge impact on your life. That I'm not just talking about course scheduling all day. We have software programs out there that can easily do that. We have predictive analytics that can do that. That's not what an academic advisor is. Does an academic advisor needs to be aware of that? Yes, you do. but that's not what an academic advisor is. And this joy of advising is when you have that opportunity to see and understand the impact your advising can make on students, and then eventually the impact they have on you as the advisor. So how many have either been to the Institute or taken the online course for Appreciative Advising? Oh, wow. This is awesome. So I'm going to get some good discussion here then today. So we'll actually be able to go through this a lot quicker than I anticipated. Anyone not familiar with Appreciative Advising? Maybe we should ask that. You're all familiar with Appreciative Advising. This is outstanding. Awesome. So we'll be able to move much quicker than on some of these concepts. But from a bigger perspective, we are seeing this, it's a much larger effort. And we do see this being applied outside of higher education. Actually, the US Navy, how they do their training of their new recruits, it's not appreciative advising, but it's appreciative inquiry, which is what appreciative advising is based off of. It's based off positive psychology and appreciative inquiry. And so you're seeing that played out there. Any NFL or college football fans? So I'm familiar with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll practices appreciative inquiry in his coaching style. And so when you see, on TV it's a little bit harder, but if you ever see his coaching style at a game, a player makes an error on the field, Pete Carroll is not going to be the one rushing onto the field, yelling and screaming, throwing the headset. He's going to let that player essentially come off the field, trade positions. The player is going to go be by himself for a minute, reflect and think, and he doesn't need to be yelled at. Not all players respond to that. And then when the ball's on the opposite side of downs, Pete's going to go have a conversation about, okay, what happened? How can we do better next time? And so he really does live out that. He definitely breaks the mold when it comes to football coaching. I think you don't see many take on that style, but he's an excellent example of that. So did a little bit of study, try to figure out what do we want. And students don't necessarily differentiate all that well from, maybe a faculty or an assistant faculty, an instructor, a professor, an advisor, a counselor. For most, it's essentially you're either a student or you're a university official. And so through this research, there's a number of different entities there. What essentially it boiled down to is that all students are looking for a relationship. Kind of what Rita Pearson was talking about in that TED Talk. They want a connection with someone at the university. They don't need someone that is just going to classify them as a number. And I think you hear that all the time. I don't want to be a number. And some institutions may do well that, okay, you're not a number, you're this major. And so you got to go deeper than that. It's truly understanding that, oh, well, early childhood majors, they typically take this course. Well, you got to go deeper than that. I always get the question, I'm sure you all get the question, what's the easiest class to take? I get that a lot, right? Well, my background is actually in technology. I have a degree in technology and I work in the College of Education. So for me, I have a nice reply for this that usually gets some freaked out looks on my students' faces. They say, well, easiest class for me in undergrad was computer programming. Why don't you give that a try? The freaked out looks like, no, that's not easy. Like, okay, well, let's think about this a minute. What do you mean by easy? How about we think about this differently? What's interesting? What are you interested in? What are you curious about? Let's take it even bigger. Is there anything maybe out of the box thinking we can think about something that might tailor well with your career interests? That way when you go for a job interview, that you could say, yes, I have the degree, I have the experience, but I also have this. I took this course, which gave me training in this. And students start to reframe and really think getting beyond that easy A class concept. What was interesting about this research I did, it was not just all four-year traditional institutions. One of those research studies was done in Canada. One was done in England. Half of them were at four-year institutions, half were at two-year institutions. One of those studies was specifically on working adults ages 30 to 39. And they didn't all say relationship per se, but they essentially said, I want someone at the institution that knows me, someone that cares about me, someone that's invested in me, someone that's going to stay with me through all of it. They want relationships. All students, all walks of life, all ages, they're all looking for that relationship, that connection piece. So whether you're doing this in person, you're doing this through distance, keeping that relationship piece in mind. Another faculty member on Institute faculty with me, Rob Friedoff, him and I kind of came up with this concept that technology does not replace you. It really doesn't. Think about technology. I mean, you've seen it already today with my presentation that technology doesn't always work. We have to have support people around to make sure it works, but it does not replace your advising. Certainly we have predictive analytics out there, and we have these early alert systems, but that's not going to replace advising. And you can't rely on that either. It's simply how you're advising. And so we talk about, you commonly hear about eCampus or eLearning or distance learning, however you want to classify it, as that, for an advising appointment where you say you got to come in person and you got to come at least once a semester. And well, already in that kind of language, you're saying for those that want to do online or want to do, Skype or whatever, that you have to make an accommodation, that they're bothering you, that they're not following the directions and the rules. Well, what about a student I had a few years ago who was a single parent working 2 jobs, and one of the jobs was working at the Budweiser distributor, worked in a town where we had Budweiser, where he was working the day shift. And the day shift he was at the factory the entire time my office was open. How was he supposed to come in for an advising appointment? That was impossible. And so that's the idea that when you are scheduling your advising appointments, which type of appointment do you want? And not just making that assumption that it's going to be an in-person. And so where I offer my students virtual is kind of what I generally say, in-person, phone. And then when I'm saying virtual, I'm asking them a follow-up question. What do you prefer? So on my desktop at any given time you look, I have Skype open, I have FaceTime open, I have Zoom, Adobe Connect, GoToMeeting. I have all these different ones because I'm going to choose the one that the student wants. If I just say, nope, we're only doing Skype only, what about all the students that don't have Skype? Then they're going to have to figure it out. They're probably not going to do it before the appointment. So that's going to eat into the appointment. They're going to figure out, then they're probably going to get an email, hey, I can't get this installed, I need some help. Which one do you use? It's easier for me to take time out of my day to figure out how to learn these other systems and how to meet them where they are. So some of this I'm going to breeze through because you've probably all seen this for some of the appreciative advising stuff. But I want to talk about an example of how I see it played out in my office. How many are doing assessment data, tracking student appointments, satisfaction appointments, that sort of thing? A little bit? Okay. So this is something we started in my office just over 2 years ago. What we do is when a student comes in for an appointment, we have an iPad set up on a little stand where the student comes in, and this is a screenshot of it. They're entering their info, their classification, whether they're a high school student, first year, second year, third year, fourth year, graduate student, or a guest. They're indicating who they're meeting with, and we have photos of all those people because we have a bigger advising staff, and we also have 2 Kellys. And then we have some student populations, and then why are you coming? And it's interesting to look at the why. So we remove academic advising as an option. They have to actually say why they're coming, and then we have an other. Other is by far what's checked the most. Because if academic advising is there, they're always just going to check it. They're going to check anything else. So we remove that out of there to see what are the others. And that helps for us to better prepare our services. Wow, we have a lot of students coming in with this. Maybe we should do some professional development on that. That's our student need. So they take this to check in for their appointment. We have it also set up that whenever one of these is filled out based on the advisor that was checked, that advisor gets a text message to let them know their student has arrived. We have one advisor that is less tech preferred, and so he actually gets an email. So he knows his appointment has arrived. Simultaneously, what happens, because we ask, it's Ohio ID, it's our fancy way of saying your Ohio email. They get an email with a satisfaction survey that is rooted in appreciative advising, straight off of all the models and phases. And then down there you can see our intake numbers. So, and this is a 2-year period. Then we've had almost 7,500 intake, and almost 800 have filled out our exit survey, our satisfaction survey. And so this is some of the initial reporting info from that. Pretty high numbers. Our entire office is trained in appreciative advising, including my recruiter, my student workers, and our administrative staff. And you can see that immediately, this idea of welcoming and student-centered. Your front office area is critical to how your appointment's going to go. If you have a grumpy Gus, I hope no one's named Gus in here. If you have a grumpy Gus at your front, how do you think that's going to affect your advising appointments? I saw it at my last institution. I'd spend the first 5-10 minutes hearing about complaints about how nasty the front person was, and I'm sorry, that's not how you should be treated. Thank you for letting me know. It's a long process, and you just hear it over and over and over. So definitely making your front area welcoming and inviting, as well as your staff. But you can see some of the data here. Students absolutely love this concept. This is not just in person. So when we have a virtual, the advisor is emailing that up. Left the appointment with a plan. We talk about that in the design phase, but actually leaving with a real plan. Positive and supportive. There's a misconception, and maybe some of you have this misconception, that appreciative advising is all about positivity, good news, sunshine, rainbows. You don't give bad news. That's a myth. It's about how do you deliver that information? How can you deliver difficult news without losing that student, without losing that relationship that you have with a student? It's different to give bad news as the university official versus bad news, how can we get there? How can we get to your dream still? And that's what this is all about. And we asked to describe your advisor. And these are the top 20 words used. The bigger the word and the darker the green is the more times that word was used. And so you can see, here's a fairly large impact study of almost 800 students with these beliefs in appreciative advising. All right, so 6 phases. I'm sure all of you could recite these for me. But disarm, I commonly describe as just common human decency. Be polite, be professional, smile. Again, without them, you don't have a job. Discover, getting to know them. Why are they there? What are they interested in? Just not taking at face value. This major, okay, moving on. The dream phase, making sure that what was shared connects, just between discover and disarm. And if they don't, that's a cue for, wait a second, I'm missing something here. Can we go back? Can we re-explain this? That sort of thing. And then in design, co-creation of that plan. That's critical. You lay out a plan of steps, here's what you need to do. They don't believe in that plan, or if that plan's overwhelming, they're not going to do it. So when you see them next semester for their appointment, all right, so tell me, how'd you do? Oh yeah, I didn't do it. I forgot. They're going to give you a reason, but basically that plan didn't work for them. It didn't mesh. And then the deliver phase, which I think is where technology can come in big time. Deliver, there's this assumption, well, that's the student. They go out and they do their plan, and I just wait for them to report back to me. Technology is huge in this area. Technology can do your follow-up for you. It can do the outreach for you, and it can make it very simple. Sure, you could easily, after an appointment, make a little post-it, I need to follow up in X amount of days. Well, you've got the technology at your fingertips. Why not open an email, type out your email, and then do a delayed delivery for a week from now? Send it a week later. Outlook can do that, if you're not familiar with that. And then the don't settle phase, where essentially celebrating their successes with them, or brainstorming, okay, we need to go back to the drawing pad. How can we readjust your plan? How can we move forward with you? All right. The prerequisite for this, though, appreciative mindset. Familiar with appreciative mindset? Basically, if you don't believe in this, their students will see right through that. Students are good about that too. If you're being fake about this in any way, they'll know. They'll see right through you. So if you don't believe in this, you actually have to believe in this. It's not going to work for you. All right, so now I want to take a little closer look at some advising practices, because I hear this all the time that, well, it's nice, I like the idea, I like the concept, but in reality, I just don't have the time. I don't know if you've heard that idea before. It's cute, but I don't have the time for that. Well, let's take a closer look at some advising numbers. And so I'm going to be using NACADA's recommended 350 caseload. That's the recommended average at four-year institutions for 350 advisees. I think they also go a step further and say that mandated advising for freshman, sophomore year and junior, senior year, it's optional for that 350 caseload. But if we look at one semester, 15 weeks, yeah, roughly. 40 hours in a work week. We know that's not true, but that's what you get paid for. So that essentially gives you 600 available hours for appointments, which gives you 1,200 30-minute appointments. That's pretty standard. Most people do 30-minute appointments. Maybe if you're doing probation appointments, it might be an hour. But that 1,200 30-minute appointments. So essentially, you can have each of your students, it's almost three and a half. So each of your students can have at least 3 appointments a semester. What's the issue there? These numbers are a little off, aren't they? So if we take a closer look, it's not really 15 weeks. It's more like 14 weeks because who's coming to see you? Finals week. University, well, we get Labor Day off. You got Thanksgiving week. So let's just eliminate a week just to be safe there. And if you look at your average work week, you probably got some breaks in there. You probably need some time to respond to emails, got meetings, and then of course the students that no-show you. It never happens. So let's just give you some rough numbers. I think I'm lowballing these numbers, but that gives you an hour, or an hour for each of those a day. So then you're down to about 24 hours a week. That gives you 336 hours, which is 672 minutes, which essentially means your students can see you essentially once a semester. Once. Which means you can see a student twice a year. How in the world are you supposed to get to know students with an hour? That's what you get. You get 1 hour a year. And we know there's those students that you'd be lucky to get an hour with them a year. And then there are those students that's, you kidding me? I have an hour every other week with that student. So it's not hard numbers, but it gives you a rough idea. So yeah, I say there's a huge case for advising to kind of help fill in, or technology to fill in some of those gaps, the in-between times when you're not seeing those students. This, I think I go into the phases. Are you all comfortable if I skip over the phases? Okay, good. Let me skip ahead. Oh. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is for the 6 phases, essentially, I've given the basic kind of core information. You all have that. And so what I'm doing is pulling out areas within each of the phases that relate a little bit more to the idea of in a digital world. And so for this first part, this is still within the disarm phase. First impressions. Anyone have a guess on how long it takes to make a first impression? 10 seconds? I heard one over here. 37, 30. Yeah. Heard many of these numbers. According to Forbes, 7 seconds. You have 7 seconds for someone to decide, I like you, I don't like you, I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to trust you, so on. 7 seconds to make that decision. And it's an involuntary decision. So how in the world are students doing this in an online environment? So they've already have a first impression about who you are, if they're going to listen to you, if they're going to trust you, before you even pick up that phone or start the video conference with them. A lot of it has to do with our web presence. We are at a huge disadvantage because of that web presence. It's my opinion, higher education websites are by far the largest and most mismanaged websites in the world. Can I agree with that or disagree with that? Like, I'll use my own institution. I can do that. I'll talk about my own institution. If you look at my college's website, Patton College of Education, and then you look at the College of Business website at Ohio University, you would swear it's 2 different institutions. Vastly, vastly different websites. One looks very modern, much more forward-thinking. One looks like it's 1999. Even the colors are different. Wouldn't even look like it's Ohio University. We're green and white, and one of them's purple. And then let's just talk about, okay, you're a brand new student, and you want to get to my advising office website for the Patton College of Education. So I'm going to start you from the Ohio University website, ohio.edu. You have to know to click on undergraduate. Then you have to click on the academic programs. And then you look at all the different colleges, And you would think it's the College of Education, but we're actually the Patton College of Education. So then you got to go down to the bottom of the alphabet to find that one. And then once you get there, you have to click on undergraduate again, and you have to find offices. And then you find the Office of Student Affairs, which that's helpful. Good luck knowing that advising is in student affairs. And then from there, you're able to click on the Academic Advising Office. Once you get to my office website, I think it's a very appreciative website. But that's several clicks deep. Any marketing people, marketing undergrads? Marketing? Any idea about how many clicks before a user generally gives up on a website? 3. If they don't find what they're looking for in 3 clicks, they're giving up or they're going to Google. So I just gave you several clicks to get to my website. And so we have to be realistic that you can only operate within your sphere, right? I can't go to the university marketing office and say, listen, this is what you need to do. That's not going to go over well. But there are URL shorteners out there. My marketing office doesn't like that I use URL shorteners, but I need to get people to my website that need the info. And so I'm able to go to the one I like, tiny.cc. I think it's easier to say that. There's tinyurl.com. There's a lot of them out there. But I'm able to just do tinycc/advising. So I can give that website out to my students, and it just takes them right to my homepage. They can find what they need. When you land on my our college website, let's just take a look at our college website. If you went to our teacher education department page, you would find a lot of really good information. But I hope you like reading. It's a lot of text, and you scroll, and you scroll, and you scroll. And you land on my office page, you're going to get a nice picture of my team. You're going to have a nice little saying on what we believe academic advising is. Of course, you're going to find a lot about appreciative advising on there as well in student language. And so it's the idea of making student information available to students, but they don't need a thesis answer on the information they're looking for. They just need enough info to get them going on what they need. Eventually, along the way, they're going to get all that policy and information. It definitely better be on your website somewhere, but it doesn't have to be in that student area right there. And then when they do get an advising appointment, and students just as well as professionals are guilty of this. When I have had an appointment, that's what I see. Open up Skype, they're in their residence hall room, and I see a nice little silhouette of them with the sun coming in. When I was doing advising with those students that worked at Budweiser, commonly what they do is they'd pull out their phone, they'd be on their break, I could see them, I couldn't hear a word they were saying because they were in the factory floor. And so it's just being comfortable pointing that stuff out. You know, like, hey, John, I'm sorry, I really can't hear a word you're saying. I don't know if you can hear me. You have a break room somewhere? Maybe we could go out to your car. I just can't hear you. Or like with this, with students, that, you know, could you close your blinds, or could we go down to your lounge? Or sounds like your roommate's having a lot of fun. Is there any way we could go somewhere else and do that? Just pointing that stuff out. They're people. They understand. They'll probably laugh about it. But pointing that stuff out. And then, of course, the happy tone. Even if it's a phone appointment, smile. Just for the act of smiling alone is going to change how you talk and how you have a conversation. It's going to make you uplifted a little bit more. You're generally going to be more positive if you're smiling. You know, we all have those days. No shows, stuff going on in your life. It's going to carry forward into your interactions with students. So you have to really work hard to set that aside and smile when you're with your students. So, skip here. Okay. Concept of advising syllabus. Anyone familiar with advising syllabus? Okay. Here or a different institution? Here? Okay. Anyone else have it here? Okay. It's growing in popularity, I'll say that. I modeled our advising syllabus off the University of Miami, University of South Carolina, and I can't remember the school. It's in Wisconsin. It's a smaller school in Wisconsin where they have an advising syllabus. It's important to do this. And let me tell you a little story of why, but how we use this. Are you all involved in orientation in some form? And so you get students and you probably talk about your college, probably pull up a presentation for an hour, talk about all the vitally important information they need to know to be successful owls, that sort of thing. And then you see them back in the fall semester, and we talked about that orientation, don't you remember? I think every institution does that. And so what we did this past summer, we scrapped our entire orientation program and from the college, not the university. So ours is a 2-day program. We get them on day 1 for the academic presentation, and then we get them on day 2 for in the scheduling lab, where it is strictly just scheduling classes. Well, that academic presentation is conveniently scheduled at 1 o'clock immediately after lunch. These are 17, 18-year-olds. Put them in an hour-and-a-half presentation after lunch with smartphones. You can bet a lot of information is being retained there. So this past summer, we threw out that all together. Students would come. We would have 25, 30 students a session come to our room, much like this. And then my advisors would come in and we would say some name, hometown, something interesting. Most of them love talking about LeBron James. They're all from Cleveland. They love talking about all that stuff. I'm not a Cleveland fan, so I'd talk about something else. And then they'd call out, all right, I need John, Mike, Susie, and whoever. I need you to all come with me. And then those students and that advisor are going to go somewhere in our building. You can't tell, we have a fairly nice building. This opened in January. It was a $32 million renovation. So we're quite lucky. I definitely will say that. But from this renovation, we have a lot of beautiful spaces in and around our building. So they would take those roughly 4 to 7 students, depending on the orientation, and would just talk. It was all about building relationships. We weren't talking about policy. We weren't talking about classes. We weren't talking about majors. Now, it was very strategic in those groupings that coincidentally, this advisor got early childhood majors and this one got restaurant hotel majors. Like, it's very strategic on that because they probably have similar questions and interests and that sort of thing. And we trained all the advisors in how to do this for an appreciative manner because it's an hour and a half with you and 4 to 7 students. And we talked about things like, well, why are you here? What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to? What are you scared about? And we did an assessment of this. After they would leave, they'd have in their email a qualitative and quantitative assessment piece. And what we found from doing this model, we had an open-ended box where they could type whatever they wanted. The top 2 things that students liked about our orientation model, they got to meet their assigned advisor because that advisor they were meeting with was their assigned advisor. And they're happy someone else was scared about fill in the blank. They weren't the only ones scared. We had a roughly 88 to 90% satisfaction rate prior to this model with our orientation. After this, we're hovering around 99% satisfaction. Students absolutely loved this model. We've used the advising syllabus as a framework for that. So in here, we're essentially establishing what is an academic advisor. Students don't have a clue what an academic advisor is. If they do, they're probably assuming you're the person to schedule classes, and that's about it. Or sometimes they associate you as the equivalent of their high school guidance counselor. In some instances, that's a very good thing. So I don't want that to be diminished, but that can be a very good thing. In most cases, that was the person they went to have their high school transcripts sent to you, and that was about it. And so it's about reframing this idea of what can you do? Yes, I can help you pick out classes, but I'm your advocate on campus. I'm your person. Okay, Grey's Anatomy fans? I'm your person. So it's about making that connection, that relationship early, before they come in the fall. So when they are in that move-in weekend and they have a crisis, they have at least one person they can reach out to. Or later on, 3 weeks in the semester, and they're struggling, they don't know what to do because this is the first time they've ever had to study in college or take notes in college, or take notes, period, because they didn't have to do that in high school. They have someone to talk to. So we're explaining what an advisor is. We have a commitment to success. And rather than saying student responsibilities, you can say commitment to success. It comes across very differently. And so it's essentially a recipe for how you can be successful. We give milestones, what you should do in the first year, the second year, third year, fourth year, and every semester. We're also very focused on the career mindset. And so in that first year, we have a career goal for you. By the end of your first year, you should have a resume. And you should have had it reviewed by our Career Center. Rather than this kind of assumption that, oh, the Career Center, that's for seniors. I don't need that until I'm trying to get a job. That's something we actually, as a college, invest in. We pay half the salary of one of our career coaches. on our campus. We're one of 2 colleges at my institution that does that. It is incredibly valuable. This career coach works 20 hours a week in our office and 20 hours a week in the Career Center. So it's been exceedingly valuable for our students. Our students generally are much more prepared for their interviews. Our students will go to there's a state job fair for teachers in Ohio. Most of our students will get contracts on the spot, whereas in most institutions, they're getting follow-up interviews. Our students are ready and prepared for those interviews. And so I'd be more than happy to email this out if anyone wants a copy. Feel free, send me an email. Made it in InDesign, so I can send you the InDesign file as well as the PDF. So feel free. I like to cite a colleague on this idea of R&D. Sure, many of you familiar with Joe Murray? He coined the concept R&D, rip off and duplicate. I'm a firm believer of that because I definitely ripped off and duplicated his Miami syllabus. So by all means, I'll give this to you. So I believe, are you all using Starfish or maybe using Starfish? All using it? Okay, you all know about the online scheduling feature? So at my institution, we're just moving into Starfish, and it's a process. How long have you all had Starfish? 5 years. Okay, so we're on the baby side of that. We're just finishing out our first year and figuring all that out. But if for whatever reasons you're having issues with Starfish, it's not working for you, this is a nice free alternative for online scheduling appointments. What I love about this, I'm not trying to derail Starfish in any way, but what I like about Calendly, it's a free service that connects to your Office, either Exchange or 365, depending on what Office version you have. But for a student to schedule an appointment with me, calendly.com/Forche. That's it. Takes you to this page, and there's several click-throughs where I say what type of appointment, you indicate virtual, there's a sub-question of Skype, FaceTime, what, yada, yada, yada. You list out your platform, your ID, so I can really customize my questions. So it's a nice alternative if you end up leaving Starfish, which statistically I see a lot, but just know that service is available. Okay. Okay, so thought we'd have a little fun. Probably need a little pick-me-up after lunch. How many have a smartphone? Most everyone? Or at least a phone with a camera? Okay, probably one of the only presentations where you're gonna be asked to pull out your phone. So what we're gonna be doing, a little disarm idea. The way students, we talked about first impressions, they're going to your profiles, preferably on your institution's websites, I hope. But they're going to see who you are. And typically staff profiles, it's going to be a professional headshot. It's going to be your name, hometown, and some generic piece of advice to be successful. Wouldn't it be a little bit better to maybe spice that up a little bit? Say, well, I'm a first-generation college student, and the reason I chose to go into higher ed is this, and here's something I struggled with as a first-gen and didn't find ways for students to be able to connect with you. And so the first thing I'm going to suggest is get rid of those professional headshots. So we're going to be doing something here with our cameras. So if everyone stand up, we're going to open up the camera on your phone, flip that around to selfie mode. And then for the next few minutes, I want everyone to kind of go around, and instead of taking selfies, you're going to be taking groupies. So 2 of you in a photo. There's a second part to this afterwards. So just kind of go around now and take as many groupie photos as you can. And so I do that just primarily to talk about that getting out there on social media. I think including posts with photos definitely has a higher readability rate, specifically on Facebook. Facebook actually released the statistic that if you have a photo on your post, it's 40% more likely to be viewed than those that aren't. Instagram, you kind of have to have a photo to post. But I just caution on Instagram, especially if you're going to do like an office Instagram account, don't just post flyers. Yes, they're photos. Now you're a billboard. It's not what students want to see. And so encouraging photos of you, your staff. You know, if you do have your advising office here today, perhaps a group photo of you that your students can see. Oh, my advisor knows that. Whoa. I don't think we talk to each other, but we do. And so just trying to keep in this idea of community engagement, you know, community sharing. Social media is about interaction. It's a social interaction. And if you're getting on social media just to post vitally important information, your social media efforts are going to fail. Because all you're doing is posting business. They're not going onto Instagram or Twitter for business. They're going on for social reasons. And so if you're going to be doing this, you need to be thinking about your social capital. How are you connecting? You know, are you also retweeting their excitements? Are you liking their posts? Are you offering suggestions? Are you having dialogue? Posting interesting things? You know, for my education majors, I posted that Rita Pearson video. I'm sure they found that pretty interesting. It had actually a lot of likes and retweets. It's about finding this other stuff that they can relate to, and then you slip in your vitally important information casually, as more likely to be caught and paid attention to. But you have to do everything. You can't just do the business side of this stuff. Okay, so some of you, I think some of you I know have seen this video, but it's a good one.
Hello there. Hi.
Hi.
I'm here to thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Christine.
Bonjour, Karine.
Bonjour.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
I'm ATM. You know what ATM stands for?
Automated teller machine?
That is correct, normally, but today you're wrong. I'm an automated thanking machine.
Hey, look at that, buddy.
That's for you. That's on TD Canada Trust.
Thank you.
Ooh, selfie. Get my good side. There's a slot that's opening.
Oh my goodness. Never in all my life had such a beautiful surprise.
Yeah, you've been helping your daughter out, is that correct?
Yes.
We've got something for you, Christine. There's something that's about to come out there. Those are 2 piggy banks. Those are for your kids. Well, we've got a little something for you because you're a famous customer. We know you love the Jays so much. Look on the other side of me. There's another slot. It's going to open up. On the left side there, yeah. It's going to open up.
That's awesome.
She's my only daughter. She has cancer and she had an operation on Tuesday.
We wanted to thank you in a very specialized way. There's actually a card coming out for you right there. And if you look inside each piggy bank, there's a check for $1,000 to start an RESP for each of your kids. Yes.
Yeah, right.
That outfit. Well, the thanking's not done, Christy.
What?
Here's the thing. If you tell your kids, hey, here's an RESP, they'll be all, nah. But if you tell them you're taking them to a place like Disney,
No.
yes, you're taking your kids to a magical place in California, Christine.
I've never been able to take our kids anywhere. Oh.
It's wonderful that you've been with us for so long. That we got somebody who might want to talk to you for a second about that.
Oh my God.
During this time, we have come to know how giving, loving, and supportive you are, especially to your daughter in Trinidad. She's a lucky woman to be able to call you Mom.
So I just threw you a ball, but Sunday you'll be throwing me a ball.
Oh my God.
You'll be throwing out the first pitch.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I got goosebumps right now.
Actually, Dorothy, could you lean in for a second? Because I have a secret to tell you. Just lean in very close. We want you to thank her yourself. So we've got something coming out of the slot right now. Something right there for you. And those are tickets. Those are tickets to Trinidad.
Are you serious?
I am serious. You're going to go see your daughter in Trinidad.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Dorothy.
I show that video specifically because we just talked about first impressions, and we just need to check our first impressions too. You know, how many times have you thought of when a student no-shows you, or they're 10 minutes late to an appointment, 15 minutes late to an appointment, you make a judgment. Oh, they're sleeping in, or they're late, or they need to get their priorities in together. You don't know what's going on in their life. Look at those people in that video. You could easily make some generalizations, and you may have. It's just human nature, you know, about who they are. And for instance, that young woman, she looked very professional. But the fact that she talked about there's no way she could take her kids anywhere. You just don't know from that surface level. You see students trying to say, you know, I'm sorry, but I'm not available at that time. Can we do something in the evening? There's a good reason for that. You got to check those assumptions that you make. I think this is interesting. (2005) to now, look at that. I'm gonna mute this down. 18 to 29-year-olds' presence on social media. They're out there, and they're out on multiple of them. I heard a good analogy, specifically looking at the younger, the lower 20s. There's this belief that they're not on Facebook. I'm familiar with that idea that, you know, Facebook's not the thing anymore. They're on Facebook. Facebook today is the equivalent to what the phone book used to be. You have it. You don't necessarily use it, but you have it. And they are really good at identifying, this is what Instagram's for, this is what Twitter's for, this is what Snapchat's for, and they can articulate it. I think higher ed professionals are just, it's all the same thing. All does the same thing. You just got to do one, or do the same thing on all of them. That's a big no-no. Don't post the same photo on Instagram, on Snapchat, on Twitter, on Facebook, because students are going to get annoyed by that, honestly. They're going to say, okay, I'm not going to follow all those. I'm just going to pick one, and because they're not differentiating, they're not using them differently than what they're meant for. They all have very different purposes, and so it's important to understand those differences. And I'm not saying that tomorrow you should go out and create an account for each of them for your office. You start off slow. My best advice is, and someone asked a question about this morning, if this is new, your office isn't doing anything, what do you do first? My first piece of advice, ask your students. Get a focus group together. Get a small group of your students together. You know who your high achievers are. You know who your at potential are. Get a well-rounded view. Don't ask all of your overachievers. Don't ask all the students in your honors program, because that's one perspective. I'm going to try and get as many perspectives as you can, and then ask them. You know, if we were to do a social media account, do you think it would be helpful? What platform would you suggest? Why? What would you like to see from us? That's your good first step. You start out small. Pick one platform and try it out. Spend some time on it. You do them all, and you do them all week, they're going to fail. The hardest part about social media is consistency. You can't just post and then 2 weeks later post something, and then a month later post something, and then every day for a week post something. It's about consistency. And they all have different time frames. With Twitter, it's roughly operates on 45 minutes. That feed is valuable for 45 minutes, and then it's gone. You could find it if you find that profile, or you don't have that many followers. You could probably find those tweets. But essentially, that feed, the Twitter feed, is meant to be on 45-minute rotations. Now, that doesn't mean you have to. That means you need to identify when's the best time within a given day or given days of the week for your optimal tweeting time. And I'll get into it in a little bit, but there are services to help you with that, so you don't have to be on at that specific time. Okay, shift a little bit into GroupMe or text messaging. How many are using a form of text messaging with students? Doesn't surprise me the graduate students are the ones doing it. Number one preferred method of communication among millennials, text messaging. I did a research study over the course of 5 years. Had about 1,000 participants in the study asking for preferred methods of communication and communication styles. I asked for just in general what you prefer. What do you prefer from your institution, from your college, from your advisor, a lot of different routes and things like that. By far, texting was number one across the board, whether it was with their institution, with their friends, text messaging, by far number one. Anyone have a guess what the least preferred method of communication was? Email, which is coincidentally the approved method of communication by nearly all universities. And I'm not saying abandon your email. I mean, that's part of becoming a professional, this process of developing through college of turning it into a professional. You're going to use email, at least for the foreseeable future. Maybe one can change that and we can get rid of email. But that's the reality. Anyone know what the preferred method of communication from their university? Snail mail. I was blown away. I'd rather receive something from the U.S. Postal Service than an in-person, a phone call, a virtual. That was the number two. I don't know why, but it was the number two. I don't know if it's just because it was the university. They need it in writing. I don't know, but that was the number two. And so this has been my solution for a number of years. Anyone familiar with GroupMe? It's an outstanding service. I love it because it's free and there are no limits on it. I've been using it for a number of years. And so with GroupMe, it's a group text message system. As you can see, it's on all platforms. It's also on desktop, laptop, PC, Mac, Android, Google, anything. It's available. You can, as the advisor, access this on your phone if you want to. I mean, I have it on my phone. I most of the time use it for my desktop, though. It's just easier to type out on a keyboard than it is on a phone. So it's predominantly where I use. But I have a Advising with Ben group. I do not enroll in my advisees in this. This is an optional service. I have roughly 160, 170 advisees. Probably 60 to 70 of them participate in this. So just know, with technology and social media, you will never get 100% of your students using a specific platform. It's just not going to happen. But it'll be quite valuable for some. And so in this advising group, generally putting out upcoming deadlines or events on campus. A lot of times answering student questions. And so what I do at the beginning of every semester, send a welcome back email to campus, and I remind them about GroupMe. And there's a link for them to join. I do have a FERPA statement, in there right by the link. Just a FYI, this is a group text message. So if you put information about failing a class, everyone in the group is going to know about it. I found that students really don't care. They still will share that information with a bunch of strangers. But I'm very specific that I will never reply in there with academic information, like academic record information. I'll talk about policies and procedures and steps, and I'll address them, but I'm not going to say, well, John, it'd actually be a good idea to repeat that because last semester you got a. I'm not going to do that. And then they also have the option that if they do have a concern, they could just send me a one-on-one message. They can go in the group, click on me, and send me a one-on-one. I do get a lot of students doing that. But what was interesting, it was unexpected, is I thought this would be a great method because one, they prefer it. And two, I was hoping it would get rid of those emails that you get the same email like 5 million times. How do I add after the first Friday? I got that email so many times. It does. It cut down on a lot of those emails. I didn't get it 5 million. I maybe got it 5,000. So it helps. But the unexpected piece of it, I'd have maybe a first year asking a question. And before I'd have a chance to get on here and reply, one of my upperclassmen would reply with an answer. And we just got to be cautious about peer advising. We always know that that's a double-edged sword. That doesn't always work out. So anytime I do get one of my upperclassmen chiming in with an answer, I would thank them and say, hey, Mark, thank you so much. That's exactly right. Thank you. I appreciate that. And so that way, my students are seeing the verification that, yes, Mark was right. You can listen to Mark about that question. So it's just been very valuable. not even an instance now. The whole time I've been traveling for this, I have a student that's been messaging me back and forth. And unfortunately, I had a student, I was going to do a student interview with you all this afternoon on their perceptions of this. And through messaging back and forth, found out her grandfather died yesterday. And so she's unable to speak with you all. She actually offered to video record the conference and we could email it out to you all. And so we might end up doing that so you can kind of see her perceptions on text messaging and social media, because she heavily utilizes it. Yeah, it's been very valuable.
So the big thing about text, right, is the immediate response. Do you usually like immediately respond back?
Not always. If I'm available, like I'm sure I got some sitting over there. I'm not responding right now, and I like ground rules for it. You know, I tell students I'm going to reply when I see it, and then I have my phone. I love technology. I have a degree in technology, so I love technology. But I have meetings. I have other students, and as long as you set those ground rules and parameters, my students also know. You message me between the hours of 5 p.m. and 7 p.m., there's no way I'm answering. Because I get off work at 5. I have about a 40-minute commute home. No texting and driving. Gets me home 5:40, 5:45. My 2 little girls, we start bedtime at 7 o'clock. Sorry. I only get a little over an hour every weekdays to see my girls. I'm seeing my girls. I'm not messaging you. So I may or may not text you that evening. Typically, my habit, though, is that every morning, like 8 a.m., I'll look at this before I look at email. Because what I like about doing that is it's not uncommon. I'll get the message in here, but I also got an email about it. It's easier to reply in here. This is a texting environment, so it's okay to use texting lingo so I can get an answer across quicker. And then I go over to my email and just archive it. Now I don't have to do this formalized email. It's just faster in here. So. Yeah, so I try to do twice a day. Try to do like 8 and then just after lunch, but stuff happens during the day, so that after lunch sometimes gets bumped. Yeah, good question. I think I had some examples. Yeah, so I went into this a little bit, but some of the kind of pros and challenges with it. Like I said, free. Oh, the notification feature. I get that a lot. A lot of advisors say, yes, that's cool, that's great. I don't want to text at 2 o'clock in the morning, so I don't know. For those that have Apple, you may know about the recent update about Do Not Disturb. That's been a godsend. So that kind of takes care of this. But within this app, you can actually turn off the notification piece of it. And so I have that on my phone because I don't want my phone dinging all throughout the day. I look at it often enough where I don't need a notification. But as long as you make a regular practice to look at it, then turning off that notification feature in the app is good. Phone number is not accessible. That's the other concern I get. I'm for this concept of texting students, but I don't want them having my number. This is anonymous. It's a profile. So it'll have a photo of you and your name. There's no email listed. There's no phone number listed. You do need a phone number to set up the account, but no one that you message with knows that number. They can't see it. It's not part of what they can see. So the challenge with it, again, not all students are going to use this. So just be cognizant. You can't rely on this for your mass messaging. For super detailed stuff, it can be a bit difficult if you're on your phone. So that's why I recommend using it on a laptop. If you have to type out a lot of instructions and directions. I do like that you can upload documents to it. So you could upload a PDF of a form that they need to fill out. That's really nice. You can upload it into there. And then just be cognizant of FERPA. You don't have to worry about the data portion of it, because if they sign up for an account, GroupMe has an acknowledgement statement where they're aware of standard texting rates apply. So you don't have to worry about the financial piece of it, just the FERPA piece of it. So, and I actually ran this through our legal in HR about the idea of using it. And as long as you're not adding your own students and you're making them aware of the FERPA implications, they were fine with it. So even though it's third party. So this is one way I essentially recruit students to join this. This is what's called an HTML email. I'd be happy to send you a copy of this where you can kind of go in, you open the file and it opens up in browser, Firefox, whatever, and you just do a select all or Control A on your keyboard, Control C to copy it, open up an email, Control V to paste it. And then it looks like a website in your email. But it's a nice way to explain what GroupMe is. I don't know if you need that as much nowadays. When I first started using this, GroupMe was relatively new. So not a lot of students knew about it, but I'd probably safe to say you all have GroupMe. Yeah, it's very common among students to have GroupMe. So, but I'd be happy to send this to you if you wanted it. So, here's an example of where I advertised about an event we had. So this was my Advising with Ben group. And we have a Unity. So every Thursday at 4, the college offers tea and like a cookie, pastry, something or other for our faculty, staff, students. You know, we just get together and chat about, there's no topic, so it's whatever we want to talk about. So, so it's a good way to advertise for events on campus too. So, any questions about GroupMe? All right. Okay, so I'm sure several of you have seen these discover exercise questions. I actually take this another way. So if you're trying to get into the social media environment and you're trying to get your office out there, pose these questions. Put these out there on social media. Because if you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I get this engagement thing going? Usually a roadblock, I'll commonly get calls or emails that, you know, we're trying to figure out how we can engage, how we can do things different, but we have such a routine. You know, it's just advising, and like, we don't have an event coming up in our college for a while. You know, our campus doesn't have any event that we're going to that's during office hour or, you know, during work hours. Yeah, we have the athletic events, but how do you get some of this community engagement thing going? And we've posted some of these questions before. It's interesting to see the replies you get from students that they'll actually reciprocate a lot of this. Twitter actually has a polling feature. That was one thing we did. We were tweeting for a while and we wanted to know from students that, what do you want? What do you think about us? And so we did a poll on Twitter and we found out that our students actually wanted to see more stuff from us about their career. They thought we tweeted adequately. We didn't tweet too much. We didn't tweet too little. The information was relevant, but we didn't post enough about career for them. We posted career fairs, but we didn't have any like issues, you know, trending topics or what's going on into the field. And so that's when we started partnering with our colleagues and our faculty, because that's not our discipline. I don't know what your trends are in fashion. I don't have a clue. So I'd go to our fashion faculty and say, hey, what's some hot topics? What's some articles? Because our first thought was, well, let's just go follow all the fashion accounts on Twitter. There are a lot of fashion accounts out there on Twitter that it was overwhelming. We're like, what's valuable? We were following Vogue, we were following Elle, we were just following all these, and they're all posts nonstop, and we couldn't figure out what was valuable. So that's why we're partnering with our faculty to help give us suggestions. So this was a really good way to get engagement, and you don't have to leave your office to do it. All right, so. Okay, so I want to brag on another institution, South Dakota State. And I know for those in the Advising Center, I don't know if I got your office name correct, but you'll have a dream board in your lobby. A lot of those ideas actually came from other institutions. So this is at South Dakota State. And what they do at their orientation, this is a photo from their students coming out of the general session, and they're writing down their dreams on little Post-it notes. They have a separate wall where the parents write down their dreams for their students on there. They collect all these Post-it notes and they have someone transcribe them. And then 4 years later at the graduation ceremony, up on the big display board, they have a ticker going across the bottom of the screen for all their students' dreams. So these are the dreams of the graduating class of blank. So it's just really powerful to see kind of this idea of this wraparound. Like, wow, they paid attention to me when I first got here and they're still paying attention to me. So it was a really nice touch to this idea of the dream board, because we're seeing dream boards are getting popular. We're seeing a lot more lobbies, but usually it doesn't go beyond that. It's let's do this dream board. It fills up. Once filled, we erase it, or we know a new semester we erase it and we start over. It's still a good idea, but do you think of how can you take this deeper? And so maybe you find some of these dreams and they're really good dreams. Post about them, tweet about them, share them. Those are really good ideas. I mean, most of the time they're anonymous, and if they're going to write their name on their dream, they're comfortable with it being shared. So think about sharing these things. Okay.
There's so many of you. When I was a kid, I hid my heart under the bed because my mother said, if you're not careful, someday someone's gonna break it. Take it from me, under the bed is not a good hiding spot. I know because I've been shot down so many times, I get altitude sickness just from standing up for myself. But that's what we were told. Stand up for yourself. And that's hard to do if you don't know who you are. We were expected to define ourselves at such an early age. And if we didn't do it, others did it for us. Geek, fatty, slut, fag. And at the same time we were being told what we were being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? I always thought that was an unfair question. It presupposes that we can't be what we already are. We were kids. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a man. I wanted a registered retirement savings plan that would keep me in candy long enough to make old age sweet. When I was a kid, I wanted to shave. Now, not so much. When I was 8, I wanted to be a marine biologist. When I was 9, I saw the movie Jaws and thought to myself, no thank you. When I was 10, I was told that my parents left because they didn't want me. When I was 11, I wanted to be left alone. When I was 12, I wanted to die. When I was 13, I wanted to kill a kid. When I was 14, I was asked to seriously consider a career path. I said, I'd like to be a writer. And they said, choose something realistic. So I said, professional wrestler. And they said, don't be stupid. See, they asked me what I wanted to be, then told me what not to be. And I wasn't the only one. We were being told that we somehow must become what we are not, sacrificing what we are to inherit the masquerade of what we will be. I was being told to accept the identity that others will give me. And I wonder what made my dreams so easy to dismiss. Granted, my dreams are shy because they're Canadian. My dreams are self-conscious and overly apologetic. They're standing alone at the high school dance, and they've never been kissed. See, my dreams got called names too. Silly, foolish, impossible. But I kept dreaming. I was going to be a wrestler. I had it all figured out. I was going to be the garbage man. My finishing move was going to be the trash compactor. My saying was going to be, I'm taking out the trash. And then this guy, Duke the Dumpster Drosy, stole my entire shtick. I was crushed, as if by a trash compactor. I thought to myself, what now? Where do I turn? Poetry. Like a boomerang, the thing I loved came back to me. One of the first lines of poetry I can remember writing was in response to a world that demanded I hate myself. From age 15 to 18, I hated myself for becoming the thing that I loathed, a bully. When I was 19, I wrote, I will love myself despite the ease with which I lean toward the opposite. Standing up for yourself doesn't have to mean embracing violence. When I was a kid, I traded in homework assignments for friendship, then gave each friend a late slip for never showing up on time, and in most cases, not at all. I gave myself a hall pass to get through each broken promise. And I remember this plan born out of frustration from a kid who kept calling me Yogi, then pointed to my tummy and said, too many picnic baskets. Turns out it's not that hard to trick someone. And one day before class, I said, yeah, you can copy my homework. And I gave him all the wrong answers that I'd written down the night before. He got his paper back expecting a near-perfect score and couldn't believe it when he looked across the room at me and held up a 0. I knew I didn't have to hold up my paper of 28 out of 30, but my satisfaction was complete when he looked at me puzzled, and I thought to myself, smarter than the average bear, motherfucker. This is who I am. This is how I stand up for myself. When I was a kid, I used to think that pork chops and karate chops were the same thing. I thought they were both pork chops. And because my grandmother thought it was cute and because they were my favorite, she let me keep doing it. Not really a big deal. One day, before I realized fat kids are not designed to climb trees, I fell out of a tree and bruised the right side of my body. I didn't want to tell my grandmother about it because I was scared I'd get in trouble for playing somewhere I shouldn't have been. A few days later, the gym teacher noticed the bruise and I got sent to the principal's office. From there, I was sent to another small room with a really nice lady who asked me all kinds of questions about my life at home. I saw no reason to lie. As far as I was concerned, life was pretty good. I told her whenever I'm sad, my grandmother gives me karate chops. This led to a full-scale investigation, and I was removed from the house for 3 days, until they finally decided to ask how I got the bruises. News of this silly little story quickly spread through the school, and I earned my first nickname, Pork Chop. To this day, I hate pork chops. I'm not the only kid who grew up this way, surrounded by people who used to say that rhyme about sticks and stones, as if broken bones hurt more than the names we got called, and we got called them all. So we grew up believing no one would ever fall in love with us, that we'd be lonely forever, that we'd never meet someone to make us feel like the sun was something they built for us in their tool shed. So broken heartstrings bled the blues, and we tried to empty ourselves so we'd feel nothing. Don't tell me that hurts less than a broken bone. That an ingrown life is something surgeons can cut away, that there's no way for it to metastasize. It does. She was 8 years old, our first day of grade 3 when she got called ugly. We both got moved to the back of class so we would stop getting bombarded by spitballs. But the school halls were a battleground. We found ourselves outnumbered day after wretched day. We used to stay inside for recess because outside was worse. Outside we'd have to rehearse running away or learn to stay still like statues, giving no clues that we were there. In grade 5, they taped a sign to the front of her desk that read, "Beware of dog." To this day, despite a loving husband, she doesn't think she's beautiful because of a birthmark that takes up less than half her face. Kids used to say she looks like a wrong answer that someone tried to erase but couldn't quite get the job done. And they'll never understand that she's raising 2 kids whose definition of beauty begins with the word mom. Because they see her heart before they see her skin, because they'll never always been amazing. He was a broken branch grafted onto a different family tree. Adopted. Not because his parents opted for a different destiny. He was 3 when it became a mixed drink of 1 part left alone and 2 parts tragedy. Started therapy in 8th grade. Had a personality made up of tests and pills. Lived like the uphills were mountains and the downhills were cliffs. 4/5 suicidal, a tidal wave of antidepressants, and an adolescence being called pauper. 1 part because of the pills, 99 parts because of the cruelty. He tried to kill himself in grade 10 when a kid who could still go home to mom and dad had the audacity to tell him, "Get over it." As if depression is something that could be remedied by any of the contents found in a first aid kit. To this day, he has a stick of TNT lit from both ends, could describe to in detail the way the sky bends in a moment before it's about to fall. And despite an army of friends who all call him an inspiration, he remains a conversation piece between people who can't understand. Sometimes being drug-free has less to do with addiction and more to do with sanity. We weren't the only kids who grew up this way. To this day, kids are still being called names. The classics were, "Hey stupid," "Hey spaz." Seems like every school has an arsenal of names getting updated every year. And if a kid breaks into school and no one around chooses to hear it, they make a sound. They're just background noise from a soundtrack stuck on repeat when people say things like, "Kids can be cruel." Every school was a big top circus tent. And the pecking order went from acrobats to lion tamers, from clowns to carnies, all of these miles ahead of who we were. We were freaks. Lobster claw boys and bearded ladies. Oddities, juggling depression and loneliness, playing solitaire, spin the bottle, trying to kiss the wounded parts of ourselves and heal. But at night, while the others slept, We kept walking the tightrope. It was practice, and yes, some of us fell. But I want to tell them that all of this is just debris left over when we finally decide to smash all the things we thought we used to be. And if you can't see anything beautiful about yourself, get a better mirror, look a little closer, stare a little longer, because there's something inside you that made you keep trying despite everyone who told you to quit. You built a cast around your broken heart and signed it yourself. You signed it, they were wrong, because maybe you didn't belong to a group or a clique. Maybe they decided to pick you last for basketball or everything. Maybe you used to bring bruises and broken teeth to show and tell but never told. Because how can you hold your ground if everyone around you wants to bury you beneath it? You have to believe that they were wrong. They have to be wrong. Why else would we still be here? We grew up learning to cheer on the underdog because we see ourselves in them. We stem from a root planted in the belief that we are not what we were called. We are not abandoned cars stalled out and sitting empty on some highway. And if in some way we are, don't worry, we only got out to walk and get gas. We are graduating members from the class of We Made It, not the faded echoes of voices crying out names will never hurt me. Of course, they did. But our lives will only ever always continue to be a balancing act that has less to do with pain and more to do with beauty.
Here's some reactions from it.
Maybe not the answer that we need to, but we're moving towards a better place.
Yeah. We definitely need more individuals like him willing to speak. There's this almost belief that, well, it's a middle school thing, that's a high school thing, but after that, people grow up. That's not the truth. I think social media has given us a lot of opportunity. It's perpetuated a lot of that. Any other reactions or thoughts?
How many of our students like get
Yeah. We're finally getting some statistics, not necessarily on bullying, but we're starting to see legitimate statistics on domestic abuse, sexual violence, all this stuff that's coming out, and they're saying, well, this is a new problem, and it's always been there. But we're slowly getting individuals like Shane here that are willing to speak. So you have to acknowledge that you probably have students right now struggling with this or have struggled with this. I mean, it's a reality. Statistically speaking, you're going to have students that'll have this. And from my personal experience, it's the students you least expect. You'd never question it or you'd never think otherwise. Just kind of like I said in the beginning with Cody. Never imagined that would have happened, Cody. Never. Or like my student last semester who came to me, she's in her senior year to be an intervention specialist. Nearly straight A's, just a really outgoing, really nice girl. She was our orientation leader. And then I'm not her advisor, but I worked with her at orientation. And then she shared with me that she was raped last summer. Hadn't told anyone at the institution when she told. So you have no idea the effect that you have on students. I did not have a long, drawn-out relationship. I knew her because I worked at orientation with her. So I'd known her, just over a year? But she came to me and told me, out of all of her faculty, her advisor, So you don't know when you're going to be that person. Hmm?
I think for me, it's like a fine line of supporting the student and wanting to be there for them, and also asking them all services.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to feel like I'm
Definitely. And that's a tough line to walk, right? Because,
make sure that they get the services and public need.
right.
Just like, well, I got
Yeah. Because where I would expect we're all advocates for our students, is anyone actually a licensed counselor or a medical professional? It's pretty normal. Sometimes you might see a licensed counselor. So it's important to make that distinction. First and foremost, thank you. Said that right away in the beginning. Thank you for being comfortable enough to share that with me. And especially for the men in the room, like a student I had like that, she shared that she was raped. And I'm a male. I'm sure that was tough for her to share, let alone with a male. And so thanking that they obviously view you as an advocate and a resource. Now, we also have a tough line that if that was something reported, I'm a mandated state reporter. And so I think it is a skill. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of practice with it, but it is a skill. And so, not interrupting, but pretty quickly interjecting, thank you so much for being willing to share that with me. I just want you to know I am a state mandated reporter. I'm going to have to let our legal office know. It is up to you if anything happens. So I just want you to know that up front, but I have to report it. And I want to be here for you. I just need you to tell me, what do you need from me? How can I be your support? And I am familiar with plenty of services, but we don't have to talk about that right now. If you just need someone to talk to, I'm here to listen. But it's tough. Anyone have an idea of the best way to refer to counseling? Anyone ever had to do it before? Walk them. It's the easiest referral that if you just say go, it's not going to happen. But personalize it. Instead of say, well, you got time? Let's go to counseling and psychological services. It's not going to go over well. Say, I got this buddy, Nick, up the hill. He works up in counseling. I think he might be aware of some other resources that I'm not aware of. He's a really great guy. We could walk up together if you want. I'm personalizing it. Now that requires you to make sure you have a existing relationship with your counseling offices. So future professional development opportunity for you all. And usually, in my experience with counseling offices side note, professional development opportunities, they'll do little workshops with your staff. It is the most relaxing afternoon you've ever had of PD. And I was at one institution where they actually had a beanbag room. They had one room is strictly just beanbag chairs. And they brought us in and did this meditation thing, and like, all right, I'm done for the day. Like, I just got to go home. This is good. But yeah, it's a tough referral. But this is happening. It's not ending. It's still there. It happens after high school. Like that myth that it's just during high school. And college campuses are supposed to be this free thinking, open environments, which they are. I think you're more likely to find that. But they also tend to be polar opposites. An environment for me is to express my strong views and opinions in one way or another, which will then make other students feel that this is less of an environment to speak my opinions. And each campus is slightly different depending on the community and the structure of your organization, but just be aware of that. Just don't think that, this is college. Everyone can figure out and explore, and it's true, there's services available, there's people around, but doesn't mean that's the way they feel. They may not be connected with those resources. Now, is any of this possible? You don't spend time, disarm, discover, dream. None of that. Unless you've developed you got to develop a relationship. They're not going to randomly go up to a university official and say, hey, this is what's going on. Unless you're in one of those offices. Why would they go to an academic advisor and tell that to them? Unless they trusted you, knew you. So you got to invest early on to get to that point. Any other thoughts on this or stuff we're talking about? Okay. Okay, so I'm fast forwarding a little bit into the design phase. So went over just the general concepts, but talking about referrals. And when you have a student in your office, it's pretty simple to pull up a website, hand them a flyer, walk them through it, nonverbals. In a digital environment, that's exceedingly more difficult. And so, with virtual, I prefer those services that offer screen sharing. Not all of them do. So FaceTime's probably my number one with my students, but I can't do screen sharing when I'm on my phone with students. It's a little more difficult. I mean, you can hold the phone up to the computer screen. That sometimes works. This is another way I found to be helpful with students. So this is something, are you guys at Qualtrics campus by chance? Use Qualtrics? You are? Oh, perfect. So I could actually email you this Qualtrics file, and you'll just have to change out some of the wording and files and stuff like that. But I essentially call it my advising resource distributor. I use this for more like on-the-go advising. Like I said, we have a very beautiful building. It's got a 3rd floor, like outdoor mezzanine. So I like to go out there when this 3 month of grayness is done in Ohio and enjoy some sunshine. Or we'll have an advising appointment. Or if I'm doing a virtual, it's much easier for me to have this up and fill this out while I'm with the student on a virtual appointment. Where I'm essentially indicating the advisor. That first box is just when the survey is complete, an email is sent to the student. By choosing the advisor, it dictates the email signature. So that's the purpose of the advisor. And it helps to personalize that email. Asking for the student's info, I'm only asking for their first name because in that email, it's going to say dear, and then whatever they type in for that first name. The Ohio ID, again, that's just our way of saying the university email address. So whatever is in there is where the email is sent. I did leave a link up here. You can see tinycc/ADV resources. So you can all feel free to test it out if you want. This is a survey for advisors to fill out, but you could jump on there and see what it looks like. Then you scroll down. There's an open body for a message. And you can say, hey, it was so great connecting with you today. That was so cool about this event you went to over the weekend. Thanks for sharing. Here's some of those resources that we had talked about on our call today. And then below that, there's an option of campus referrals, and they're all buttons. So you can go through and click them all. It has their office name, what they do, their website, their phone number, their email. So they can have all that in an email form. Below that, it's then resources. And so if I'm going to be giving them, I don't know, the equivalencies from our local community college, there's a PDF I can attach for that. Or what are the requirements to get into our major into the sophomore year? You can click that down. You can click as many documents as you want, and it attaches those PDFs to the email. And then the last thing we have on there, and you'll see it's quite long, is our 4-year plans. We map out generally how you could finish one of our degrees in 4 years. And so they can add that to it. And when you click send, it sends an email to the student listed with all that information in there. What I really like about it is that in the body of the message, that's my advising notes for the most part. I'm able to copy that once I type it, go into advising notes, paste it, and then maybe I have to add a few more things, but it's the majority of my advising note because I'm summarizing what we talked about that day. So it's really, really nice. It's been pretty beneficial. Like I said, I use it quite a bit with when I'm doing Skype or FaceTime, or when I'm doing like out of the office advising on campus, that sort of thing. So it's another way to help with that design phase. All right, so I'm about to show another video. This kind of really fast forwards to the end of the 6 phases because I wanted to expedite that since you've all been through the phases. But I have a kid president video. I think this is just as beneficial for you all as being academic advisors as well as for your students. And so that's why I show this video. So I get a lot of questions about, especially in the don't settle phase. And how do you instill this with students? It's really hard to vocalize and instill this idea of don't settle with students. And like I said it a couple of times, I'm quite blunt with my students that I show them stuff. I have quotes in my office hung up. My students do know I like kind of the inspirational type video type stuff. It's really easy on social media, right? You can post these. You know, pick a day, the week, month, or inspirational video for the day. Put it out there. It's really, really easy on social media. But when you're in offices, students start to know what's your thing. So with me, it's it's videos. I can expect that from me, and it's not uncommon. I'll get a student, they'll say, "I need a new video from you. What do you got?" And after watching stuff like that, it's pretty easy to have a conversation, right? It's easy. You get them in that mindset of do better, be good. They're pretty open to that idea. Now, is that going to work with every student? No. You got that student that we just talked about that's going through a crisis. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend going, well, let me show you this inspirational video. That's not going to work. So of course you got to be selective with this sort of stuff. But I think with social media, another really positive area I found from surveying students is inspirational quotes on Pinterest. I didn't realize that was a thing. I thought Pinterest was where you went to get recipes and crafts for little kids. That's at least why my wife uses it. But there's tons and tons of quotes on Instagram. Just the people have designed and made them look really cool, so you don't even have to go through the effort of doing that. That it's not just a Google search for a quote, it's search for it on Instagram and someone's already made it look nice and pretty. And you can take that and post that sort of stuff. But it's this idea of instilling that you're a forward thinker, you're a positive thinker, and you want better. And if your students see that from you, they just come to expect it from you. So that was really quick going through the phases, skipping a lot of the stuff you've already seen. You're all comfortable with that? Okay. I was hoping that was okay with all of you, so we can move on to some of the other stuff that I'd like to talk more about. Okay. As my diversity professor says, time for an awkward transition. Oops, too far. There we go. Okay, so now let's talk about the role of social media within advising and what that looks like. So for some of this, it's going to be a little bit of platform-based, but it's something that you can typically go cross-platform on. But it's to give you an idea of differences in platforms. Some of my best practices I kind of found from a little bit of R&D from certain people, but hopefully you can find something beneficial to this. So I alluded to this a little bit ago. You don't do the same thing on every social media platform. You don't say, all right, Friday's the last day to drop a class. We need to tweet. We need to do an Instagram photo. We need to do a Facebook post. And we need to do a Snapchat for that. Because again, they're only going to follow one if you start doing that. And so it's recognizing the considerations, the limitations of what various social media can do. So if you ultimately figure out, okay, a Snapchat is a good way to do that, you shouldn't be posting that on Monday. Because if you do a Snapchat about this on Monday when Friday's the last day to drop, they'd say, oh, I got time, I can do that later. A Snapchat is going to be more immediate, right? For those that aren't familiar with Snapchat, it disappears. Unless you save it as it disappears. Not really, but it does. So maybe a more appropriate use, that would be a Friday post. Maybe Friday at noon would be a good idea. Generally speaking, more students are awake in that time frame. Then if they do see it and it's a surprise, they theoretically have 5 hours that you're still, your office is at least open where they can come and get some questions. Those Friday emergencies. I mean, we're perpetuating Friday emergencies with that, but at least gives them an opportunity. Doing a Snapchat at 5 p.m., not a good idea. Like, are you trying to panic your students? Because now you just put that out there and you're not available to help. So just be considering the different limitations that are available. However, I've come to discover it's a little bit more like this, that there are ways around various things. Some of them still have very true and hard fast limitations. And they're starting to merge with each other. If anyone, or is anyone on multiple of these platforms, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, really trying to steal each other's ideas and trying to do the same thing? So they're starting to do this. They have to work. It takes longer to develop that culture of it, but you know, now they all have the story. They all can do a live. They all are starting to overlap services, but at the true sense of what they do. Like I said this earlier, ask your students. If we were to do something, what should we do? And so that's what we did. We asked our students. Now, we already had a Twitter account when I arrived. Wasn't the most utilized, but so I started asking students, is this still worthwhile? Does it make sense? And at the time, that was still definitely the most popular students. So we beefed up our efforts on Twitter. And I'll show you some of our statistics in a little bit. But that was the number one. And then we said, okay, we got this kind of figured out. What else can we, what else can we do? I said, should we look at Instagram or Snapchat? And we were trying to figure out which would be a better way for us to go. And through some small group interviews, we kind of found students said both would be valuable, but for different reasons. Our students said that, you know, we'd really like for you actually to get on Snapchat, but we really want that for like finals week. Okay. He said, you know, during finals week, I would often find that some office was doing some sort of exam break. And usually by the time I found about it, it was too late. And those offices won't get on Snapchat. So would you guys do it and let us know? And so we tried it. And we actually found out all the exam breaks that we didn't include existed. And we found out our Residence Life office at 2 a.m. the week of finals, they do a coffee and donuts break for everyone on campus. Had no clue they did that. And so we started posting on that. So we use Snapchat. We only use it for the week of finals right now. We'll probably continue to reevaluate that and see is there more usage, but that's what our students wanted. So we did it. And now we're exploring this idea of Instagram. So we're brand new this semester on Instagram. We hadn't done that before. We had advisors, each had like a Instagram account, but there was this need of, well, my friend's advisor posted this on their Instagram and mine didn't. Could you guys do like maybe an office one? And if it's something that applies to everyone, it goes on there. That's a good, fair argument. Yeah, we could easily do that. And then that way the advisor can really just kind of focus on their niche area. So just understanding the different uses, but ask your students, what do they want? Because they don't want it, they're not going to use it. So you might not be able to read all these, but this is just a quick overview of the differences of each. Although the Twitter one is now outdated because you can do more than 140 characters. No one else was excited about that, but I love that. Uses, what's different about some general statistics, who uses it, who doesn't. I don't know if you can blame me for not realizing what Pinterest does, that it's 80% of their users are female. So it's just a good snapshot of what does what. If you are in the STEM fields, in colleges with STEM majors, look more seriously at LinkedIn. That is something that's normal in that industry for you to develop a professional LinkedIn account. Many job offers come from LinkedIn in the STEM fields. And then for any of those that have a large international student population, specifically of Asian countries, you might want to spend some time investigating Google+. That is a quite widely used in most Asian countries. There's some anomalies here and there, but most Asian countries heavily use Google+. And so I'm going to take a look at the uses and implications of that, specifically with your onboarding process of pre-orientation and orientation. So some quick information about the Twitter and a Twitter account, and again, it's the 140 that's changed. But just to give you an idea, 6,000 tweets every second. Imagine the amount of tweets that have happened since you've been sitting in this room. And so that's why I really reiterate that it's 45 minutes. It operates on 45-minute cycles. So just because you decide, okay, we need to send a tweet out, all right, let's send it out first thing tomorrow morning. Majority of your followers are in bed. Why are you sending out a tweet at 8 a.m.? They're probably not going to see it. Because while your feeds might be small, you might be able to see your entire day's feed because you may not have a ton of followers. They have plenty of followers. Their feeds actually do refresh every 45 minutes. So just take that in consideration about when would be optimal times to post. Facebook is still the largest. It's maybe not the most widely used by early 20s, but it is by far the largest. And they, anyone know the largest growing demographic on Facebook? Define older. That's a trick question. Good job. So we're seeing women between the ages of 50 and 59. It's the largest growing population on Facebook. It is still heavily used. You can see the demographics 25 to 34. I might argue that's more like 27-ish now. This data is somewhat older, but it's the late 20s to early 30s. That's the group that essentially when Facebook came out, that's roughly that demographic there. So that was for that population, when social media was created, it was Facebook and that was it. There were other spin-offs of it, MySpace and stuff like that, but this was the one that started it all. And that's roughly that age demographic. I mean, the late 20s, it was after them, but they still use it pretty heavily. So, Instagram. Instagram, I want you to think about in terms of branding. It's identifying your brand, who you are. If you want to look at some entities that are really good about using Instagram for professional capacities, it's the private sector. They're phenomenal at this. Specifically, I'd recommend National Geographic. By far the best Instagram account out there. They also have a lot of really good material to post. So they have a bit of an advantage about that. But it's about identifying how do you feel about a company? How do you feel about an entity? What emotion do you want to draw from? What do you want to play from? And so it's really an opportunity for you to talk about how do you want your students to feel about your advising services and about your advising office and about FAU as a larger capacity. And so just be thinking about when you are posting, what does it make you feel? When you see that image, is it all flyers? Because now I'm going to start to be thinking about billboards driving down the highway. Is that what you really want to be? So think about showing you in a different mindset. Your students see you in your office, aside from those that are in the parking garages here. They see you in your offices, and that's their view of you. So you might want to think about, if you're going to do a post, maybe a photo of you outside. I know we had a teacher in the room. You ever run into one of your kids in the grocery store? Like, what are you doing here? Why aren't you at school? They have the same view of you. Why aren't you in your office? What are you doing? And so just show yourself in a different light, but you get to control that message while you still can until they decide it for you. Your seniors, I don't think you're going to be able to change that branding image. They've already decided who you are. But it's for the next class, the major changers, the new incoming students, the transfers. They haven't decided who you are yet. So that's what you're thinking about when you're doing Instagram, identifying who you are to that population. So I cited this, so Joe's on there at the bottom, but rip off and duplicate. So here's several accounts that I've either managed, are mine, or I currently manage. So feel free. I'll send this PowerPoint so you can all have a copy of all of these as well. My previous role at Ohio State, those were the accounts I managed. Facebook was the biggest one, is the most widely used. That was also at a time when Facebook was still kind of more so the number one. We started developing Twitter and Instagram roughly 2 or so years before I transitioned to my new institution. They're still doing great things. I still do social media. Their Instagram has really taken off. They've gotten really good at design eye sort of things with some of the things they're doing. My current institution, something we're trying out now is on Twitter and Instagram. That's where we're focusing. You see we have a PCOE Advising for Twitter and Instagram. It's the same username. I encourage that. Versus my last institution, 3 different. So really encourage similar usernames. Makes it a lot easier. Instead of saying, hey, are you following us on Facebook? Okay, well, it's this username. I know you're following us on Twitter, but you got to look for this username. It's different, but trust me, we're the same office. So try to use the same. And then what we're seeing is most of my advisors are also having their own accounts, which I'm perfectly fine with that. And so, like I mentioned on Instagram, mine's advisor.ben. I do have several other Instagram accounts, but I want to have one specifically for advising. And then for me on Twitter, I really don't use it for personal reasons. My Twitter is specifically focused on the field of advising. So I tweeted when I was on my way here, when I see various articles on advising. I mean, that's what I'm using Twitter for. It's for the field of advising more as a professional to connect with colleagues. So I do follow on Twitter and ask questions on Twitter, but it's more personal preference what you use it for. But it's important to identify that. So, but yeah, feel free to borrow ideas or rip off and duplicate. So, the biggest thing on the call to action. If you're putting out information and you're saying, well, they're not doing anything, did you ask them to do anything? Or was it the last data drops Friday? You expect them to do anything with that? Yeah, you're probably saying, well, yeah, they should come ask questions. Did you tell them to come ask questions? Did you give them a number, an email, office hours? And so you want to always be thinking about a call to action. And so we got a new university president this past summer, and he wanted to do a president's kind of like a cabinet, if you will. It was kind of like an advisory group where he wanted undergraduate students that he would basis their perceptions of what should he be doing, what is the university not doing, that sort of thing. And so he put out a call saying, all right, not apply. And so we posted about it. But then we also told them, let's show them Patton College students apply. Let's show them how we roll, that sort of thing. Call delete is essentially our core values for our college, and so that's what that alludes to. Our students are quite trained on this concept. And we actually, from this, we generated quite a number of impressions, is what it's called, that we were one of two colleges recognized by the president for getting people to apply for this. Not necessarily all of our students were chosen, but we got some recognition for how much we generated traffic to that application. Now, if you want to find out the data on this, right? So did it reach anyone? Analytics.twitter.com. If you have an account and you just type that in, it'll pull up the full analytics for your profile. Most people don't know this site exists. There are other social media ones too. It's slightly different. This one's specifically at Twitter. I think Facebook, it's Facebook. Not all of it. Some of it's free. Yeah. Facebook's really good about revenue. They know how to get money. But there's one for Facebook. It's just slightly different. It might be facebook.com/analytics. If you do a Google search for it, you'll find them. And then this is also if you want to do the immediate. So whenever you do a post, at the bottom of your post, you'll see 3 vertical bars. You click on that, and this just gives you some immediate data. So from that tweet, whenever I clicked on it at the time, you can see we had 991 impressions. We only have 700 followers on our Facebook account, yet 991 impressions. And that's because other people saw it and retweeted it, shared it. And so the more you can get interesting information out there that people should know about this, either liking it or retweeting it, other people hear about it and other people see it. And so it's important more so for you all running professional accounts to focus on these top 2, the impressions and total engagements. I can tell you right now, your students are focusing on the likes. That's a affirmation for students, likes. They'd much rather get a like on social media than you did a good job verbally. They live and die with this like mentality. They get more out of that than anything. And so this gets you some of that immediate data if you don't want to go to this analytics.com or analytics.twitter.com. So here's just kind of an idea of, give you an idea of what this did on Twitter. And so when we came, we were just putting out important info. And then we started looking at this idea of doing a little bit more engagement, a call to action, liking and sharing our students' successes, engaging with them, a much, much different focus. We were still putting out the same amount of data, important info, but all we did was increase our fun info, inspirational quotes and videos and interesting websites and hey, I saw it was your birthday, happy birthday, just the fun stuff. And so this snapshot, this is the analytics.twitter.com. This is the top half of the page. And so you can see this is a 28-day summary in 2015, 2017. In that 28-day summary in 2015, we were getting almost 4,000 impressions for a month. We flipped it and started focusing more on engagement. 2017, we're at 12,500 impressions in a 28-day period. We only have 700 followers. And so from that, you can see that you're being involved. You're engaging with them. They're looking at your stuff. They're not unfollowing you. So this is how you can get more traction on Twitter. Here's the Facebook one. This is essentially the free version of it. There's some other ones you can click on, like if you want more specific data, click here and pay this, and they'll drill it down really a lot for you. So you can definitely see that over various periods of time, and they break it out into different pages. So on Facebook, what I liked about Facebook is actually if you have a business account, it actually tells you how many people it reached without having to click anything. So on Twitter, you'd have to click those 3 vertical bars. Here, it just tells you exactly how many people did that post reach, which is really nice. And then there's that little boost post for $5, you can reach this many people. They're good about this, different business plans for it. So here's one at the beginning of fall semester. And so this was posted on August 30th. I believe we started the 28th. So this, I think, was the 3rd. I'm trying to remember what day. We were closed one day. That might be the 2nd or 3rd day, essentially, that was posted. And so we do what's called walk-in advising. I'm not a fan of the concept of walk-in advising. I really don't promote that idea, but it is ingrained in our culture, in our students, that they know what walk-in advising is. I don't like it from a simple accessibility mindset that not all students can walk. So I really prefer a different name. So it's something I'm struggling with right now. But we offer it. And so we actually reposted ourselves, which is weird, but it works. And so in that first one, you can see we actually posted a little graphic, and that graphic is all throughout our building. So it's tying this all together. So when you see graphics on bulletin boards or on digital displays, it's kind of like that subliminal messaging. Like here, it's kind of like that reminder. You see it 3 times, you start to remember things. And so that's where this is able to come in. And you can see that we only got 1 retweet and 3 likes. Click on those 3 bars. Ooh, we got a lot more than just that. We had 2,300 people had impressions on. 17 engagements. And the engagements, they actually clicked and did something with it. So get that all the time. I tweeted, why aren't they doing anything? Again, the call to action. Are you asking them to do anything? Or are you just throwing info out there and hoping it sticks to the wall? But it always boils back down to this idea of relationships. Are you trying to connect with your students? Are you trying to draw from their heartstrings and their emotion and show your sincerity that you care and you want them to succeed and you want to be the best versions of themselves? You can do that in social media. There's plenty of examples out there of bullying. You can see it. It still exists. We need to show the opposite of that. So in the idea of leveraging relationships, you're going to get students that are essentially going to follow you, right? And so if you put out information, they're following you because they have some sort of relationship with you. Could be very new, could be well established, but they trust you in a sense because you're getting into their environment. You're getting into a social environment and they chose to follow you. So there's some level of trust there, right? And so I encourage you to talk about leveraging with other areas. And so here was one way where we wanted to engage our high school students. Now, they don't follow us on Twitter. They don't follow us until they get to orientation because usually they don't know about our Twitter account. So we partnered with admissions. We have postcards that go out on a regular basis, and admissions pays for them. We kind of decide the content. And so we changed out one of our postcards to be this hashtag new Patton Bobcat. where it went out to students that were admitted in their admissions letter. I think you guys do a all-in or something. Yeah. So, yes, the all-in. So we did this new Patton Bobcat where their admissions letter, they would tweet a selfie or post a selfie on Instagram with this card. And as long as they included the hashtag new Patton Bobcat, so that way we could track that we would randomly select 5 students at orientation, because they had to come to orientation, that would win a Kindle Fire. $50 for, at the time it was $50 for a Kindle Fire. Now they're like $30. They keep going down. But we raffled off Kindle Fires for those that posted this and came to orientation. And then that, of course, caught on to all the other students at that high school. And so we're spreading that way. So you figure out the easiest way to tap into the high schools and a recruitment idea is to get a student to follow you from that high school. And then you start bragging on that student. So we had a student who's coming this fall from Defiance, Ohio. That's Northwest Ohio. We never get students from Northwest Ohio. I'm from Toledo, which is Northwest Ohio. If I get anyone in that general 300-mile area, I claim them as mine at orientation. Like, yes, I got one. Because everyone's from Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati. That's where all of our students come from. And so she's coming. And so we definitely want to capitalize on that. And so we sent her a tweet, hey, so excited to see that you've included Ohio University in your profile. We can't wait for you to come in the fall. And then she responded. And then we responded. And we went back and forth for a couple of weeks. And now we got her connected with faculty. And I can only imagine what that's doing at her high school. But I know because now I'm seeing all of her friends at her high school are starting to follow our account. And now we're starting to get traction with the Toledo schools because it trickled into that. So we're getting the Toledo high schools are now starting to follow us. So it's just this little ripple effect that you can make. And then you can see 1,300 impressions from that one. Leveraging faculty. And so this is an outdoor survival class. We have a class that goes backpacking for a month in our national forest behind us, but they have to take a survival course before they go. And so on our back lawn, they do this survival course of what happens if this happens out on the mountain, what do you do? We went out there and took a photo and posted it. And then what we did is the faculty member, he got on Twitter and reposted that on his account for us. Because he had well-established relationships with all the recreation majors, which it's a newer major that we're starting to advise. So we don't have a lot of their students following us, but because of this, they trust Danny, they know Danny, so he liked it and he retweeted it. So his students do the same thing. So we then saw more followers from there. Athletics, I mean, it's quite an easy way. There are plenty of students love athletics. There are also students that do not like athletics, so keep that in mind. But that's an easy way. And so our women's crew team was doing a fundraiser at Chipotle. Well, that's easy. It touches on athletics and it touches on service because they were doing a fundraiser for, part of it was to help for equipment, but then another part of it was for charity that they were partnering with. That was an easy way. And we also included the university as a whole on there. Be selective about that. If you start tagging, FAU's main account on everything, they're not going to retweet your stuff. Right? They might like it, but they're going to say, okay, they tagged us again. Be selective about which ones you want to tag on your posts. Because then if you're selective, they're more likely to do it. So you use that kind of sparingly. And then we do a welcome and convocation at the beginning of the year. So at the beginning of the year, students come together, they hear the Distinguished Faculty of the Year speak, and then they hear various students from different majors speak. And so one actually posted a photo of herself at the event and tagged us on it. She hadn't even started class yet, but she already started following us is because we were investing earlier on. So of course we're going to repost that. The fact that she did it, that's going to get us more followers than we didn't have to do anything. She has a bigger reach than we do. She's a student. So here's on Facebook, and I think I mentioned earlier that if you have a photo, 40% more likely to be viewed. And so here you can see this is where it's appropriate doing office business. And you want to sneak this in. I know this is probably the majority of content that you want to put out there. Last day, this one says last day to add with instructor permission. You could probably rattle all those off right now as your most important messages. Take a minute and think about a different way to present that info. This is much more visually appealing to put out there than just putting out all straight text. Because if you put it as all text, look at all that info that's on there. That'd be a lot of information in text format. And I'll show you in a minute, a free online design software to do stuff like this. It makes it very simple. So you do not have to have a design degree to come up with stuff like this. So here was one that I told we needed a very quick survey. Actually, we had a request from our dean, day of, can you give me some data on your students about what the way they think about your social media and what you want to do next? It wasn't something we had done yet. And so you can see we posted this. We didn't get a lot of votes, but it was enough for us to make the case that, okay, 15 votes, 46% wants to focus more on more career major content. So we end up replicating this survey again later, but it's an idea of testing the waters. So you can do some of these polls because those, again, it's only a 45-minute window. So keep in mind that you're not going to get a ton of participation, but this is an area where you can test waters about what do students want that can lead to bigger research projects. All right. Any Project Runway fans? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to bring out your inner Tim Gunn here for how can you make some visually appealing pieces without having a design degree or background. My go-to, I use it often, is Canva. I do have a design background. I understand Photoshop and InDesign, Illustrator. I can do all that. I can. I still use Canva a lot. It's just so easy to do. On my phone, I'm starting to use Spark Post. It's an Adobe product, but it's free. It's meant for on mobile devices. It's not meant for a desktop computer, but both are really great services. What I like about Canva, what I like best about it, is you can choose the different types of formats. So if you need a social media post, you go in that and it breaks out further of, well, do you need Instagram, or do you need Facebook, or do you need Twitter? And it sizes it for you exactly as is. The problem is with all these different platforms, they have different dimensions the posts have to be for photos. This takes care of that piece, so you don't have to research all that and figure out how to get them to be the right size. So it's really nice in that capacity. It saves all of your existing posts, so you can actually make a copy of them. And so you can see this one I have here, it's Access TV. We have monitors, not quite this big, but in our building like this, where it's just a rolling slideshow of different announcements. But it's really, really weird dimensions. It's a 49.5-inch monitor, but it's really weird. So it took a while to figure out how many pixels wide by how many pixels tall. And once we figured that out, it's like, there's no way I'm going to remember that. What's nice about Canva, I hover over this little drop-down area to make a copy. Now I can just go in and I don't have to worry about the size. I already figured it out. So on Canva, it has tons of free options. It also has stuff you can buy. If you want to buy, that's up to you. It's $1 per like image or graphic to the buy. I personally just jump over to Google Images, find what you want, bring it into there. So just realize there's options with that. All right, so planning ahead, being a little bit more proactive. And so I know, like I said, that you don't want to be posting at 8 a.m. Realistically, it's probably when you have the most time to be thinking about this sort of stuff. But probably the time to post is between 11 and 2. That's generally for your population when they're most likely to be active online. But how can you do that? And so Hootsuite, good go-to. I actually did, now you can do Instagram on Hootsuite, which is really nice. What's nice about Hootsuite, and this is the platform, I know it looks very busy, but when you're on here, you can tweet from Instagram, tweet from Hootsuite, but you can choose the exact date and time that it gets posted, or you can do this thing called auto schedule, where what it'll do is it will analyze your people that follow your account and kind of mathematically and statistically average out based on that day of the week what will be the most opportune time for it to be posted. It'll have the most likely viewership from your audience. So it's a really powerful tool. They did just make some changes where you have a limited now. You can use so many auto schedules. I think it's per month. I can't remember. It used to be unlimited. They just changed that. They're trying to make some money off of this because it's free. But it's still a very good service. And so you can see here, these different feeds, so each one is a standalone feed, you can customize that. And so for mine, I want to see our home feed. I want to see if anyone sends out a tweet that they mention us. Anything I've scheduled, so this one was scheduled to go out the next day at 12:15, and then any messages that I'm tweeting about. So it's a good way to just kind of organize and structure. Now, what I typically do to make things easier, I'll go maybe the week before a new semester starts, and I will schedule out all the business tweets. I know when I'm going to tweet about pop-in advising. I know when I'm going to tweet about walk-in advising. I know when I'm going to tweet the last day to add a class. Do all that ahead of time when students are not on your campus. Plan all that out. And then what that does is when students are on campus for the 15 weeks, you don't have to remember to go post that stuff. Now you're using Twitter from that engagement perspective. So it's really a week of planning out all the business and then 15 weeks of engagement. So when you're going to social media, it's not to remind about upcoming deadlines. You already got that taken care of, so you can't forget it. It's about seeing, oh, it's someone's birthday. I'm going to like that. Or, ooh, I saw this really cool inspirational video. I'm going to add that on there. It's supplementing it, making it fun. Okay, and then we're actually way ahead of schedule because I breezed through the 6 phases, but Civitas, you're familiar with Civitas? So they're going to be coming to give you a quick kind of teaser trailer. So they'll be coming in a little bit to kind of give you an idea of what's coming with that. So I'm going to skip over that for now. All right, so student privacy considerations. Maybe. Okay. So I asked our legal team, going into social media, what do I need to be aware of? I encourage you to go talk to your legal team. This is what my team told me. I found it is very different from institution to institution. And so I asked them, what do I need to be aware of? I'm creating we already have a Twitter. We're going to be creating an Instagram. What do I need to know from a legal aspect? And legal teams, if you've never interacted with a lawyer at your university, they're going to operate in hypotheticals. They'll never give you a concrete answer. They're going to say, well, it depends on the situation. It's never you could even give an example and say, well, what if this, this, and this? And they'll say, well, they're never going to give you a concrete. That's just the way lawyers operate. But what I was able to kind of get from them is essentially from our perspective, if you follow your students on any platform and you see something, there's an expectation to act because we're a state mandated reporter. So if we do see any, some of it's obvious, if there's any crimes committed, of course you do have to act on that. But if you see those kind of gray areas, if we see some bullying on social media, there's an expectation for us to act. So we need to follow up with the student being bullied. We need to reach out to appropriate services on campus. We have this expectation to go above and beyond. We follow. Now I get into this huge debate of, for those that are not comfortable with social media, typically those are the people higher up that have decision-making abilities. Generally, those are the people less familiar with social media. And so you might get this argument. They'll say, okay, well, fine, we just won't follow any of our students. Easiest recipe to kill your social media efforts. Because if you're not following anyone on social media, where's the social aspect? There goes the engagement. Now you're, again, back to being a billboard. Because you're only posting information. You have nothing to reply on. Nothing to retweet. Nothing to like. Nothing to answer questions on. So it's not an easy discussion, but it's a reality. And so that was a concern brought up where I'm at. Our HR, I was called into our HR because they said, yeah, we heard word you guys have like a Twitter account. I'm like, yeah, we do. And they're like, okay, well, we heard that you're liking stuff or you're hearting stuff. I don't, what is that? And I'm like, well, that just, our students posted, and the latest trend is hashtag new profile pic. I don't know if that's here, but our students are posting new photos and making it their profile pic, and they've created a hashtag on it, so it's nonstop, these new photos, and we're going through and liking them, like, oh, great photo, and using a little camera emoticon and that sort of stuff. And so they just were concerned that, what is this heart thing that you're doing? And like, explain it. They're like, okay, well, could you maybe take a step back? Like, I have the Facebook, but I really don't know. And the second they said the Facebook, I'm like, okay, I got this. So I quite literally pulled out my phone. I said, well, let me show you our account. Let me walk you through this. And, quickly I start going and explaining. I'm like, yeah, so if we like a photo, you just like it. And they're like, so is it that little heart? I'm like, yeah. They're like, okay, well, how do you like? That little heart. Heart and like are the same. Like, and so literally explaining it. But I'm telling you this because it probably will happen at some point if you start doing this the way you should be, with community engagement. But just be prepared to have those conversations. So I went through that conversation because anytime you get a call from HR, it's definitely nerve-wracking. Walked them through the whole process, and yeah, okay. Well, this is really cool. I can see why students like this. Yeah, you guys are doing good. Okay, is that it? Like, that's what you wanted? They're like, yeah, we just didn't know, and we wanted to know. You could have led with that, but so just be prepared. It is a reality. There are no hard and fast rules out there. This was all I could get from our legal and our head HR, our university HR. That's all I could get out of them. What do I really need to know? Because it's so new, there's not a lot of legal precedent out there. There's not a lot of best practices out there. Typically, the stuff you see in the corporate sector is a lot of stuff higher ed won't touch. There's no way they're going to do some of that stuff. And so it's tough. It's just tough. You're in a new area within higher ed. With text messaging, this is, again, I just really want to reiterate this FERPA thing. You're on a third-party website. You have access to academic records, which is federally protected. Be careful. So if you are inviting students to do it, making sure they're aware of FERPA before they join, and don't share that private info in there. Even on the one-on-one direct messaging, I still won't do it in there. I'll answer questions, provide guidance, but I'm never going to outright say what's going on. Anyone familiar with Moore's Law? We got someone. Can you tell me Moore's Law?
Basically, that computing power or other technology is going to double its ability every 2 years.
Yeah. Yep, that's it. So it refers to computer processing speeds. They'll double every 2 years. This came out in the 1970s. 70s was a great era. It was the Moore's Law. It was FERPA. It was an Archie Griffin won the Heisman Trophy twice. So, but it's this idea of doubling every 2 years. And this still holds true to today. This is extrapolated out into technology. That technology capacity doubles every 2 years. And if anyone pays attention to the iPhone innovations, it does. It wasn't too long ago that you could have next to no photos and you couldn't have video on an iPhone because there wasn't enough storage on it. You have thousands upon thousands on there, and it holds true. I bring this up because what I kind of talked about in the beginning, that what we're discussing today, from a methodological standpoint, will hold true. But you even saw my Twitter went on there, it still said 140 characters. Technology changes, and it's going to keep changing. So I just want you to be comfortable with that idea. If you spend all this time into innovating and coming up with how you can be on Twitter and how you can be best practices, just realize that's going to work for today. It might work for the next couple of years. You're going to need to revise it. And you might need to switch to a whole new platform. That's just the way technology and social media works. It's going to change. And so you just need to be comfortable with that idea. So this is my personal take and why I continue to do social media. I think it really does offer insights that would go unknown in our students. And so I want to tell you a little story about one of my students. So this is Jamie. Jamie, of course, is on our volleyball team. She's the captain, co-captain of our volleyball team. It's her senior year. She was expected to be MAC Player of the Year. MAC is our conference. By far the best volleyball player in the MAC this year. I had high predictions for her. One of the first weeks of the semester, she received this award, the Ultimate Elite Athlete Award. Extremely difficult to get. It's an Ohio University award. It is not specific on a sport, and it's not specific on gender. You can see how few people have ever gotten this award. Quite difficult to earn this honor. And it's essentially about pushing your limits to becoming the best that you can, and has to do with character and leadership and service. It's essentially this all-around dynamic athlete, and it is very difficult to get. And I don't know if you've been reading ahead or if you can read this on here, but she talks about later that week she had a match, and she's an outside hitter, so she's one that comes from the outside and spikes the ball. And so she was coming up. I think she described it as her 8,000th time going up for that move she's done. Came down, and her ACL didn't agree with it. Tore her ACL. Fortunately, it was earlier in her season. She was able to redshirt this year. But there goes MAC Player of the Year for her. And then me as the advisor, knowing, okay, this happened. I know she's in methods right now. She's supposed to be teaching 2 days a week. I know her placement is a good 30 minutes away. It's not easy to travel with a torn ACL. She going? I mean, that was my immediate concern is, one, is she okay? But she's probably not doing well in classes right now. So go another week or two later, or no, a month later, this was a post of her in the hospital recovering from ACL surgery. Fortunately, her parents gave her amazing care and took her to a very specialized facility. And unfortunately, it was only in Cleveland, but was able to get her the care she needed, and it was top quality care. Now, again, all of it, I would not have known without social media. Up until this point, I would have had no clue any of that happened because she didn't reach out to me via email yet. I didn't see her in person till, I think, December 2nd or so. We had been communicating, though, because I was on social media and I was able to see all this, know what was going on. Now, in one of these posts, she had mentioned that she was redshirting and she's coming back for her 5th year. So, don't worry, I'm gonna make it. And me being the advisor, like, okay, I'm supposed to graduate in the spring. I don't know how you're coming back for a 5th year. Fortunately, I was able to check in. She was going to her classes. We were able to get the transportation she needed. And then so when we did meet, or rather a little bit earlier, I said, you need to come meet. We need to talk about this 5th year thing you're talking about. Because she essentially has a student teaching this semester. And she goes, well, yeah, I'll do that next fall. That's no problem. Okay, well, what are you going to do this spring? Well, I'll take classes. Well, NCAA is not going to be okay with that. You need to take degree-bearing classes. And she didn't have anything left. And so because of this, I was able to get in touch with her earlier, and we worked it out. So that way she's going to graduate this semester, and she's going to grad school in the fall. She's actually able to take her skills to a whole new level. And because of this, it was quite an experience. And I don't know if anyone's athlete torn ACL, it's a 50% recovery rate. And it's a recovery rate not on the physical. It's a recovery rate of the psychological. Most athletes, when they have that ACL torn, there's this idea that I'll never be back to 100%. I'll never be as good as I was. And so they struggle with their rehab and usually don't get back to the capacity that they would if they took it seriously right away. One of the most optimistic people I've ever met. She powered through that. I mean, she got the elite award for a reason. 100% recovery for her. She's already back on the court, ready to go. But because of social media, I was able to get that outreach much earlier to be planful and mindful, so that way we could keep her teaching placement this semester. So that way we could meet graduate school deadlines, figure out if she needed the graduate record examination. So that way she can come back next fall, and it's not just for electives or random classes, that it's actually going to be something that will help her career in the long run. So you can see the power of social media that is there. So I'm going to show you a little video kind of illustrating the importance of social media. Anyone seen Social Media Revolution? This was put together by a PTA, Parent-Teacher Association in Seattle, I believe. So this was a video. And they put this together really to get the school, the Board of Education out there, to be thinking about social media, because their school was doing nothing to address social media. And so they saw the importance of this, that you need to be talking to our children about social media. Oh. No. Sorry, it's cutting off part of the video. Pretty crazy numbers on this stuff, right? I don't know if you caught it. You might have saw when I had to open that file. But that video was made in 2012. Imagine what the statistics are on all that today. Yeah, it is. So you definitely, it's happening whether you want to do it or not. So it's just a matter of, do you want to be involved or do you want to be forgotten about? So definitely encourage you utilizing social media, and there's ways to do it successfully. Any questions about saying kind of that social media overview? I know it had a lot of info on it. My presentation will be available, so you can kind of go back through, read a lot of that, see a lot of the links and that sort of stuff. Any questions about any of that?
Yeah. So I'm happy to say that we do a lot of the things that we're currently doing,
good.
but our biggest problem is gaining those followers.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking to see like your followers during the presentation. How do you guys get followers?
The easiest way, and it's playing off the minds of your students and why they utilize social media. The easiest way we get followers is at orientation. So on day 2 of that scheduling lab, they come out of the lab. We have an inflatable Rufus. It's our mascot. It's a Rufus the Bobcat. So we have a giant inflatable Rufus. We worked with our printing team. Have you ever seen one of those things that you kind of hold up and it's a frame, the middle's cut out? So we have one of those designed. Up at the top it says hashtag Patton Proud. That's like our kind of our college logo, Patton Proud. And it's got our little logo at the bottom. And so what we do is we don't take the photo. If you say, hey, jump in there, we're going to take your photo, their immediate thought is, no, I don't want you taking my photo. But if you say, hey, you want to jump in there, I'll take a photo. And then you get their phone, you take a photo of them in there with their, and then you give it back to them. So you don't have the photo. One, that eliminates the need for copyright release. So you don't have to worry about that piece of it because it's a photo you took with their phone. They have the photo. And you know they're going to post it. They're brand new at college. They want to brag and show everyone out they're officially a college student. And so when you give it to them, say,
comment and like. You just told them you'd like it, which is how they generate positivity and affirmation. They find number of likes. And so most of them do it. They follow us. Or they post it, they tag us, we like them, and then they follow us. So every year we lose a decent amount of followers at graduation. Well, not necessarily graduation, in the fall. Those that graduated the following fall, when they start seeing some of our, you get a lot of students that want to kind of cut ties. I'm in my professional world now. Typically what we see is they make the transition. They actually have 2 college Twitter accounts. We have Appreciative Advising, which is predominantly our undergraduate students. And then we have Patton, which traditionally all of our alumni. So we see they kind of switch. They stop following us and they start following Patton. So we kind of offset that. So for every time and then every summer, our numbers, we have a large number. But then we follow numbers. But over the summer, we'll get 25 will follow us a day. We do orientation Monday through Saturday. For that whole month, we're getting 20-ish followers. That's the easiest way.
I know we're trying to incorporate that into our orientation presentations, but it hasn't been working. So maybe like a hands-on doing something with a photo.
That's nice. Give it with the power. We just really don't want to do this.
We want like a day.
Want to take a look at our PCOE advising on Instagram? We started doing that this season. 4 or 5 students take it over. And for those that aren't familiar, you could actually do a search Instagram or Twitter for hashtag takeover. On Instagram, we do hashtag Instagram takeover. Control of your we're selecting about the hey, John, come here. You want the password to our account? So we actually are very selective. We're using one of our college investors they represent our students for the college. Quite literally, some of them. But these are the students that the board of trustees needs to talk to one of our students. Grab one of them. Respective families on campus, they want to talk to a student. Grab one of them. Ribbon cutting for the building. Grab one of them. Those are our best of the best. Trust them. And so we are having them be taking over our ideas. We had a conversation with them ahead of time. So we don't want you doing this to brag about that. Not what this is. We want you to give us a true, authentic view of what your day is like. Of course, we want you to be respectful in the idea that we don't want you taking it to a bar. Yeah. This happened this morning. Can you hear me? I think it's on. Okay. Yeah, so we kind of give them a little bit of coaching ahead of time. And so if you get on there and you look at our first student, she's on the women's crew team. And so her first Instagram story of the day was at our recreation center, I think it was like 5:30 in the morning on the rowing machine. And then we told them, like, part of any organizations, clubs, rep that on there. And so then she put the account, you can put the account name on the post for the women's crew team. And that, I mean, it definitely generates, we get some interest off of that. We have full intentions of using this for recruiting purposes. And so down the line, we're going to start when high school students say, well, I want to talk to a current student. I want to see what it's like to be a student here. Oh, check out our Instagram. We got day in the life of stories on there. And we know that's where we're going to generate a lot of following on there. So, yeah, good. Thank you. Any other questions on social media, text messaging, anything I talked about today? Okay, keep going. Anyone, I know some of you heard this morning. Anyone have an idea who this quote's from? Any guesses? Oprah? Kid president, that's right. That kid's awesome. He has a lot of, he's a wealth of knowledge. He's not a kid anymore, but. And then this is my favorite quote. So any runners in the room? No? Okay, so we got a couple. So I ran cross country and track in high school, and then like most high schoolers in this country, if you're a distance runner, your hero, Steve Prefontaine, he was a runner for the University of Oregon, ran for in the U.S. Olympics, but he's one arrogant person, so I don't know if he should be a role model, but he talks about this idea of to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. And that's one of the message I want to leave you all with today, that you do have amazing gifts and abilities, and I just want your students to see that. And so really taking a moment to think about how can you engage these students in a digital world? How can you make them feel like you're not accommodating them by engaging, but that's just an option, that there's no right or wrong way to do this, but you care and you want them to succeed. So I threw a bunch of videos up there. One of them, or excuse me, two of them we skipped over, but the Rita Pearson, she's the one in the beginning, talking about saying sorry, to teaching that math course wrong. The automated thanking machine, that one you usually just find on YouTube. It's from TD Bank out of Canada. Marcus Buckingham, I think you all saw Marcus at the Institute. This is a different video. It's a 6-part video series about playing to your strengths. And so this is a different part than what's played at the Institute. Shane, I don't know how to say his last name, but he's the one that talked about the bullying and poetry. P.T. Solomon, he has the documentary called Find Me. It's a really, really interesting documentary if you haven't seen that. She's shown that at some of the institutes, but not necessarily all. So if that wasn't shown at the Institute, you can easily find that. But it's just this kind of interesting concept, and more so literature and film, that they all follow the same formula for a story. And regardless if it's science fiction or adventure, but so it just kind of walks you through that process and what that looks like. And essentially what the point we're trying to make in this video is that for every hero, regardless of who it is, whatever story, there was someone along the way that saw something in that hero when they didn't believe in themselves. And we kind of make the cross analogy to
you being the academic advisor, seeing something in your student to be part of that journey. And then the last one with Kid President and the pep talk. So the appreciativeadvising.net is the website if you want more information. As I understand it, you have to access this off campus, but that's where you can find more information, different resources, articles, things like that. We do have a journal. We publish the journal twice a year. So if you are interested in writing, if you've never written for publication, this is probably the best place to start. Way most journals. Anyone written for publication? Okay, so we've had a couple. So generally when you're writing for publication, you submit your manuscript, your document, and usually you get a reply back. You rarely ever get a, yes, we're publishing your piece. Usually it's a no, needs revisions, or just no. But usually it's left at that. There's not a whole lot more context behind it. Or they might say, weak in this area, fix it. We definitely go above and beyond. And so for some of the grad students, if you've ever or edit one of your papers, I describe it looks like a lot like a candy cane. You know, it's just as much red as there is white on that paper. That's the way this journal kind of operates. And so again, you rarely will get a outright, yes, we're publishing. And we rarely will ever say, no, we're not publishing. Almost always it's a, yes, we want to publish. Here are some things you need to think about, but we're very, very detailed. And you know, you bring up some really good points here. It would be really helpful for you. You could find a source. Here are some different entities you could look into that might have some good places for you to cite. So we gave you some really hard feedback to make it a simple editing process. There's two different ways to write for this publication. One is on practice. So you're doing something innovative and cool, and you want to just kind of write about it. Or if you're doing something more of a theoretical approach. In theory, you're analyzing different resources, things like that. So the journal serves two different types of writing. We're on social media, as you might expect. So Facebook and Twitter are by far our most popular. There's Appreciative Education and Appreciative Advising. So there's two different ones on there. The Appreciative Advising is definitely the bigger one. I am on Facebook as well. Feel free. It's facebook.com/Forche. If you want to follow me on Facebook, of course, I'll accept your request. But primarily, I use that for showing off my kids. So if you want to see baby photos, that's a good place to go. I don't post all that often on Facebook, but that's generally it's happy birthday, happy anniversary to my wife, or look at all these lovely photos of my kids. Twitter is where I'm a much more professional standpoint. So on my Twitter, I am exclusively using it much more for advising, the field of advising. I do have some sense but it's primarily more about going to this conference. I learned about this, everyone should check it out, or ooh, I just come out. You know, so it's more from that kind of perspective. On Instagram, I posted them earlier, but this is my personal one, so advisor.ben. Relatively bringing this back a little bit. One thing I started this semester, and you can see a couple of them on here, Tuesday tea. And so what I do is every Tuesday I take a student to tea, but I have the stipulation ahead of time. One, it's pure voluntary, so anyone can do it. They don't have to. But we're not it's not your advising appointment. We're not talking about classes. We're not talking about career. We're not talking about major selection. I sit down and the general prompt is, tell me something I don't know about you. And there's some new students that I don't know a whole lot that I've met with. And then there's one student, he's ROTC. And for those that don't have ROTC students, they have a very structured process and forms that have to be completed every semester. So I see him pretty regularly for that sort of processes. But in true military fashion, he's very business oriented. And so when we met here, I learned so much about this kid that there's no way I would have known in an advising appointment. So it was just really cool and eye-opening to see kind of the stories that he was able to share, because I was able to set that precedent. We'll have your advising appointment later. What don't I know? And so I was able to learn a thing like he was on the water polo team in his high school, and they were basically an awesome water polo team. They played against Northwestern University and won, which, I mean, it's an unbelievable thing about a high school team being that good. So it's a really great opportunity that I've found, and I'm going to plan to continue doing. Here's some resources if you're looking to read up more on appreciative advising. So much of what at the Institute, an online course, is primarily focused on that first book there, The Revolution. It's a very easy read. It's a very fast read. The next one is the training workbook, which depending on what year you came to the Institute, you either got or you did not got, because that something relatively new that we've been incorporating as part of the Institute, getting this workbook. But it gives you a lot of different exercises and tests and things you can do with a team or a class or that sort of thing. For anyone teaching a freshman seminar class, you might want to think about this Appreciative College Instruction book. This was written by Jenny and then my former supervisor at University of South Carolina. We modeled this book off of a class the three of us taught. It was a class, we called it University 201. This class was made, and you took this class if you failed University 101 the previous semester. Well, if you're failing your freshman seminar, you're probably failing everything else. And so I think our class average GPA was a 0.3 or something. So we just talked about that. How can you facilitate, a freshman seminar course? Which I'm very excited to report that one of the students that was in that 201 class recently graduated from medical school. So we talk about that not crushing dreams. Kid had less than a 0.5 GPA. He went to medical school. So for the career aspirations and expeditions, that would be valuable for this front row here. This is really driven towards graduate students pursuing careers in higher education and best practices preparing. It's going to get into things like resumes, cover letters, interviews, salary negotiations. It goes really in depth to that process. And then the last one, increasing persistence, which if you don't know Wes Habley, kind of consider him almost the godfather of academic advising. It's a strong passion of his. He's been researching and writing on the idea of student persistence and retention for probably over 30 years. Really good knowledge in this book. Since it seems like everyone in this room has attended the Institute or the online course, certification, just if you don't know, one of the requirements to be certified is attending the Institute or taking the online course. So this is the next step in the process. It involves kind of your personal philosophy of advising and some evaluations of peers, advisor, students, that sort of thing. So strongly encourage going through that process. Of course, we have the online course. I sometimes get questions that I did one or I did the other, or which one should I do? If you're one that you like to talk things out and you really like to really have the ability to focus in, that's what's great about the Institute, because you can cut out everything and just really focus in a 3-day period really on the material. You have others in the room so you can kind of talk it through. There's large group, there's small group activities, so it's a very hands-on type of environment. However, if you're one that you really need this stuff needs to set and kind of marinate, and you need to over time, that's what I like about the online course. It definitely is a bit more of a reflective process. It includes a midterm and final. We're not grading that from a APA research perspective. We're grading those from a what did you get out of the course? What do you think? Is there any processes you're going to change? That sort of perspective on that. Although we do have some people treat it as a research paper, that's not a requirement for that class. So I will say with the online class, we realize everyone taking this class is a working professional. So if anyone does run into situations where, hey, the midterm is due on like one of the worst weeks for my season, let the instructors know, hey, we're moving that deadline. So if it's like peak advising and you just really can't get it in that week and you just need another week, let your instructor know. We're fine with taking it a week later. It's not a big deal. We realize you're working professionals and this is not a college course you're trying to take. This is a professional development opportunity. So we don't want this to be a wasted opportunity for you. Of course, the Institute, which we talked about, and many of you have been to, the Appreciative Administration Online course. Anyone taken this yet? It's brand new. I don't know if anyone's taken it. We ran a pilot in the summer, I think. Our first class went off this past fall, and then this spring, I think it was last week, today, Okay, so it started today. So if you didn't sign up, then you're late. But this is how to essentially, for those that are aspiring directors, assistant deans, you want to oversee advising in a larger capacity. It is for people that currently are in that role or for those that aspire. I don't know if anyone's familiar with John Maxwell's work, The 360-Degree Leader. Really good read, really good book, but it talks about how you can see leaders at all levels of an organization. And so it talks about how can you be an appreciative administrator even if you're not an administrator. And so it's giving you those skill sets for that day when you do step into that role of being a director, assistant dean, whatever you want to call it. So, and so I alluded to this a couple of times, but it's that ripple effect. You have no idea what your efforts can mean to. I think I had mentioned that my previous institution was not the most supportive of me with appreciative advising. They more or less tolerated me doing that. They allowed me to go, but they definitely held it over my head. And I was the only one at the institution that was practicing appreciative advising. I couldn't get anyone to listen to this concept and do this idea. And so I thought I was essentially alone there, which is why I'm at the institution I'm at now. It was either this year or last year. There was a participant at the institute that was from my former institution, and she had moved on. She's at a different institution now. And so I went up to her and I was like, hey, this is awesome. You're here. Like, someone at your institution come here, recommend you to come. How'd you find out about this? And she's like, well, you told me about it. I'm like, no one else? Like, she's like, no, you went every summer. You always said it was awesome. And I really liked what you had to say. And no idea. I mean, just no idea that she actually paid attention or even cared about it. And so I tell you that just because you have no idea the ripples you're making, what type of effect they have. So I know sometimes with Appreciative, fortunately, you have all of you in the room. You have each other to lean on with this sort of stuff, but never know your actions, what they can lead to with others. So, all right. We will be Civitas. I don't know if they should be here soon if they're not here already.
Time to fill out the server
Okay. So if you want to take a minute while we're waiting for Civitas, visit this link. This is an evaluation of today, so I'd really appreciate your feedback, what you thought of it. I definitely acknowledged maybe a little bit of jumping around, but once I learned you all knew about the 6 phases, I wanted to make this valuable for you all, so I definitely changed things up on the spot for you all. So. Is that it? Okay.
Hi there.
Ask her if she can hear us. Okay.
Hi, Jeffrey. Can you hear me?
Okay, that's what.
That's the people. Okay.
Hi there. Test, test.
Yeah, the volume needs to be on for sound coming from this machine to be heard.
Hi, Bridget.
Hi, this is Bridget. Hello.
Hey, Bridget.
Hey, can you hear me?
Right here through the ceiling. Hey, Bridget.
Hi. Hi, Jeffrey. It's Bridget.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay.
Let me try joining.
All right. All right. Hey, Bridget, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Jeffrey, can you
All
hear me?
right, perfect. So I think we're ready to start here. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Jeffrey Johnson. I'm the Assistant Director for Academic Planning in the Provost Office. I have Bridget Bird, who is our Civitas Partner Representative. Civitas is a software package that we bought that helps us to better predict our students' persistence here at the university. So Bridget's here. She's going to demo for us the Nudge Hub, which is a series of short messages that we would send to students that would help persuade them and encourage them to persist here at FAU.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to share my screen.
Okay. And we don't see it yet.
I think you need to unshare your screen.
Okay.
Can you? I see a slideshow right now that's. Yeah. Okay, so once you stop sharing, I'll be able to share mine.
Okay. We're working on it.
Okay, no problem. Okay.
Oh, that's me.
That's it.
So it looks like your screen is still up. If you're able to, on the Zoom, click unshare.
Oh, there you go. I think we see you now.
All right, perfect. Thank you. 1 second. Let me pull mine up. Okay. So there we go. All right. Hopefully you all can see my screen now. I just have a few slides that I wanted to go through first before I jump into the Nudge Hub, just to ground us in the work that we do here at Civitas Learning and what we are doing with you all there at Florida Atlantic University. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes to speak to you today. I work as the Partner Experience Manager here at Civitas Learning, and I've been working with Jeffrey Johnson and also Jason Ball and others through the process of standing up some of our software. I'll be on site and about end of April, it looks like, to do a training and one of the applications, specifically Inspire for Advisor. So before I get into our content today, I really wanted to speak real quickly on what Civitas Learning is. We're a predictive analytics software company that partners with you to provide strategic support for your student success. And without getting too deep into the weeds about the software, I did want to make mention that we felt what an important variable for measuring student success is persistence. And I wanted to call that out because as we go through the Nudge Hub, you're going to see that we mention very low, low, and moderate persisting students versus high and very high. And I really am not going to walk you through into what contributes to that score today, but I did want to make mention that the nudges that we've created have separated those groups of students into two branches, basically. But today I'm going to spend some time talking to you about the Nudge Hub that we have created. So I'm sure you all are familiar with nudging. So it's a small push in the right direction that doesn't require a student to take a prescribed action, but it encourages certain behaviors of the students. And so when that's presented from a person that they trust from your institution, then the student has the freedom to make their own choices with the information about behaviors. And we know that those are more strongly associated with positive persistence and graduation outcomes. So the best nudges, we believe, are short, they're personal, positive, timely, and action-oriented. And just real quickly, what you'll see as I take you through the nudge library is that these are not long emails that a student is receiving. So it's not an informative email, it's not a reminder, it's not a wall of text. It doesn't require an action, though it might encourage an action for the student to take. And a nudge, the nudges that we're creating are leaning on the nudging best practices, which I will point your eyes to on the nudge library as well, which is a downloadable list for you. And also a nudge, the nudges that we are leaning on are really based in the mattering and mindset work. So specifically with the growth mindset first, I know there's a lot of text on the screen here, so I'll just slowly walk us through. So the nudges that we've created in the nudge library are based in two separate principles. One is the growth mindset. So this is the notion that if a student believes that she can overcome a challenge over time with effort, then her abilities are not fixed, but she can grow, then she responds more resiliently when challenges arise. So it's really encouraging and fostering that ability that they can overcome the challenges that are in their path to graduation or to persisting into the next term. The other type of content that we've created is based in mattering. This certainly both resonate, I think, with online and e-learning education, but mattering, I think, really resonates a lot with building that sense of community for the student. So mattering is an important part of being in a community and feeling that sense that you matter to the people in that community. And if you feel like others in the community are interested and concerned about you, then it can influence your behavior to participate more into that community. So I'm sure that Jeffrey and Karen will share this nudge library URL with you as well, but in case you wanted to write it down, this is the URL that you all can use to access our nudge library, which I'll take us into next. So it's info.civitaslearning.com/campaign-resources. It does require you to enter a password the first time that you go to the website, but then it should allow you, as long as it remembers, on. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to jump into the nudge library and show you what it looks like. So hopefully you can still see my screen. So this is our Civitas Learning Partner Nudge Hub. We have worked with a team of behavioral psychologists to write this content. At the top of the page, you'll be able to see this part of the page changes over time. We like to showcase our recent webinars that we've hosted specifically around nudging, and also our community insights report The Community Insights Report are also valuable resources to you all as our partner, and you can look to those to see what other partner schools are doing, how they're using Civitas learning software to power student success within their institution. So there's a lot of learning that you can receive there that's based on other similar institutions such as yourself. So I'll go ahead and scroll down. So the first three at the top are going to be our newer content that we create. We have content that's created for students that are nearly 75% or more of the credits. They have 75% or more of the credits that they need to earn a degree, but they may be at risk of dropping out. We have end of term re-enrollment, and also one more course nudge. So this is particularly of interest for part-time students. If you're working with part-time students in your caseload, then you may want to check out this content. I know I don't have a lot of time to speak to you today, so I was really just going to show you these and then jump into one particular. So I scroll down a little bit further and you'll see that we have broken out our nudges based in spring 2018, and we also have fall 2017 content. So this was particularly important for our partner schools that were sending nudges in the fall term, and then they wanted new content for the spring term. Our nudges are template based, so they are certainly up for you to recreate or change. We understand that you know your students better than we do, and you know what language resonates with them more. So I'm going to take us into the online Students Nudge campaign. So this is a series of mindset nudges delivered at key points throughout the term. And they're designed to help online students build a growth mindset. So we have those that are based in mindset and those that are based in mattering. So I'm going to click into mindset first. And what this does is it takes you to a 13-page document where it's going to walk you through what nudges are, give you some grounding in what the growth mindset is, again, as well as call attention to the important researchers that have contributed to so much for this area of research. Talks about the opportunities, who the target students are for this particular nudge. So in this case, it was online students, as well as who should own this. So in you all's case, I understand that I'm speaking to a large room of advisors, and I think there may be a few others that are outside of advising in your room, but I want to mention that we work with a lot of different partners that use nudging. And so sometimes it doesn't necessarily only come from the voice of advising. It might come from the voice of student success or some other type of student retention group. So the nudges are written in a way that they can come from many different voices, but we know what works best if it works best if it's coming from a voice that a student recognizes. So as I mentioned earlier, you're going to see that as you go through the different content that we've created, the nudges are going to be broken out into the very low, low, and moderate persisting groups, and the very high and high groups. And that's why I mentioned earlier, I didn't want to get too far in the weeds of that. If you are going to be attending Inspire for Advisor training later in April, then you'll hear that content in great length, why we divide the two groups and what contributing factors go into the scoring there. But for the sake of today, from a very high level view of this, the way that we perceive this is that students that are perhaps struggling more might require they do require a different type of nudging than a student that is high achieving and doing well, and maybe have less of risk involved in their likelihood of returning. But as you can see, the nudges are very short in length. We know that subject line is really important. And can you all see my screen okay? I can, I don't know if that makes it any better for you, but you can see that the subject line is one that draws the student to want to open it. So this is going to be a great spring term. And then we always want it to include their first name, so it's more personable for the student. Again, it's short content, it's digestible. Inserting a call to action, we believe that that's very valuable and gives agency to the student to take action, making them feel more committed to the choices that they're making there at FAU. And as you scroll through this, you'll see that we have four nudges or 4 time periods within each nudge group that the message has been centered around. So this is the first 2 weeks of the term messaging. Scroll to the next page. We have another nudge that is written for prior to midterm exams. A third one that's after midterm exams. And the fourth is the last 2 weeks of the term. It also gives us some good examples of what some call to actions could be for the students to take. And it doesn't always have to be signing up for an advising session or signing up for to participate in some group. It can also be a thought exercise. It could be a link to a resource, especially when I think of online education and e-learning, linking students to, I don't know if you all have some type of tutoring service that is centered for online students, so linking them to that resource. I've seen many of the other partner schools that I work with even linking students to a Facebook group to give them that sense of connection, sense of belonging. One of my partner schools actually uses Workplace by Facebook. It's linking their online students to that resource. And so the types of calls to action, we give 4 different types. An advisor or the sender of these nudges could create, but then we expand on that. So for thought exercises, we give some concrete examples for you all to consider. Links to resources. So joining clubs, signing up and attending events, as well as scheduling appointments. So I'll stop there and I'll scroll back up to the top to see if you all have any questions or if you'd like me to lead you through another one.
I think we're good, Bridget.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for the time today. And hopefully you all can visit the Civitas Learning Nudge Library. Again, it is a resource available for you. I do want to mention that there will be summer 2018 nudges that will be created prior to the summer term beginning as well. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right, I'll stop sharing my screen so you guys can have it.
All right, so just want to reiterate, if you haven't had a chance to go on and complete that assessment, so we can see what you thought of today. And then I do want to leave up my contact information. I do have my personal email and my cell phone up here, so feel free to email me, send me a text, give me a call, and then continue to use this eLearning FAU hashtag. If you noticed in the little break there that some of those photos were actually uploading to that slide some, so I'll send that link out later. It looks like it may need a little more time to load them all up on there, but Is there any other questions? I'm up here if you want to come talk. Thank you.
Thank you.